Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Spring District Data Coordinator meeting for the MHRIC region. If you haven't already, please go ahead and put your full name and district into the chat so we can give you proper credit for attending the meeting. And let's just get started. We do have a lot for you today, so let's get to it. So this is our agenda for today. We will have those due dates and timelines for you, some data reporting updates. We're going to have our special services team meet with you earlier in this meeting today, followed by a special presentation by our representatives, Amy Shapiro and Steve Wendell from the Mid-Hudson Migrant Education Center at SUNY New Paltz. Those two things might be switched, special services in the Mid-Hudson Migrant Education. So 4 and 5 might be 5 and 4. We'll see how it goes. That will be followed by a 10-minute break, followed by some data reporting reminders. We do have some great breakout sessions planned for you today. That will last about a half hour in total. We're going to follow that by another 10-minute break. Then some more data reporting reminders, staff testing on the horizon, and an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may not have asked during the meeting itself. So let's get started with due dates and timelines. Every time we meet, we start off telling you what's going to be coming up in your immediate future. So as promised, here's a little bit about due dates and timelines. Take it away, Michelle.
Thanks, Helen, and good morning, everybody. Before we walk through the list, let me remind you that due dates are subject to change, and NYSA deadlines are on Fridays. However, for us, this means migrated from level 0 by noon on the Wednesday prior. So, okay, the first couple of items were due last week. We had the second pull of beds, day enrollment, and FRPL data. The first pull of this data was in January, and just like with that one, the March pull is used for preliminary state aid calculations. Those calculations will be finalized with the third and final pull in August at the end of the data reporting year, which reflects the numbers as of the end of the school year in June. The second item due last week was the UPK enrollment data. This included UPK students enrolled up through March 13th and is being collected for calculating UPK grant funding. There will be a final collection of this data in early June, and I'll let you know the exact date in just a few minutes as we go through. This week, preliminary data for the My Brother's Keeper, MBK, and Liberty Partnership programs are due. NYSA's deadline is Friday, March 22nd, which for us means migrated from level 0 Wednesday, March 20th by noon. All recipients of My Brother's Keeper with active grants must report complete data to SIRS using program service codes 4005 through 4009. The Liberty Partnership Program code is 4004. Not every district offers these programs, so we will review the list later this morning. Now let's move to some upcoming deadlines. So on Friday, May 17th, we have a couple of deadlines. So Friday, May 17th, that again means for us migrated from level 0 by noon on Wednesday, May 15th. The official New York State out of certification match is performed at level 2 based on data collected up through that point. The data is considered final. If you haven't already done so, take a look at the SIRS 328 to see if you have teachers listed as out of cert. You'll want to check to see if the out of cert is accurate or if there are reporting details to update that will remove them from the list. And you know, with all of these, as we go through this morning, a lot of these particular deadlines and topics will be addressed in more detail. So also on May 17th, day calendar, student daily attendance, course instructor assignment, and student class entry exit data are due. Please note that student daily attendance, day calendar, and course data must be current through May 3rd and will be extracted for the Office of Accountability on Monday, May 20th for growth purposes. Although we don't have the exact date at this time, we do know that L and immigrant student counts will be due in late May or early June. The counts for this poll are considered final and will be used for Title III applications. The due dates for May 31st and June 3rd pertain to summer EBT. On Friday, May 31st, which means migrated from level 0 by noon on Wednesday, May 29th, there will be an initial poll of student enrollment, address, and FERPL eligibility data that will be used by the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, OTDA, to calculate summer EBT 2024 benefits. Monday, June 3rd is the date that the extract will be created with the data from that poll. While we are talking about summer EBT, I'll have you skip down to the last item, Friday, June 28th, which means migrate from level 0 by noon on Wednesday, June 26th will be the final poll of this data. Accurate and complete reporting is critical to making sure that students' families who qualify receive summer EBT benefits. All right, so going back to where we left off on Friday, June 7th, which means migrated from level 0 by noon on Wednesday, June 5th, the final UPK enrollment data is due. The counts will reflect UPK students enrolled up through March 13th and will be used again for UPK grant funding. Lastly, in June, the exact date is TBD at the moment. The special ed end of year PD system collection opens. This will be for the review and certification of special education data in the PD system by 2 due dates, August 5th, which is for the VR 13, 15, and 16, and September 9th, which is for the VR 11, 12, and 14. All right, so the here for your reference is the link to NYSED's 23-24 timeline, and a quick year at a glance with a few notable reference points. All right, so now we will hear from Pam regarding data reporting updates.
Pam, are you muted?
I'm here. I apologize. I had a little Google glitch. And I'm going to try to breathe normally again for a moment. Okay, so anybody want to know what's new? Let me change that question. Anybody need to know what's new? I guess you wouldn't be here if you didn't. So let's start with some updates. Okay, late yesterday, we received notice that there's a new SIRS manual available. Here's the email that we would have sent to you had we had any time in between then and now to send it. We're not really going to go over this now, but please refer back to this after the meeting and download the new version of the SIRS manual for your reference. Okay. So soon, but not quite yet, we will be receiving a new update for level 0. Release 19.02 will contain several minor fixes and updates, many of which are designed for a better user experience. In other words, they help to clarify what is going on under the covers. The first area that is being addressed is the verification reports. Now, if you have ever been to any training here at the RIC, you know that we often stress that import errors and verification errors behave differently. Although we and several other RICs have asked if the verification errors could be made to work in the same way that the import errors do, where when there's an error, once you fix it, it's cleared from the list. The answer is unfortunately no. The verification report must be rerun to clear the error. So the folks at level 0 have added some messages to try to remind the users of this. The first place you will see this is when you do a validate and save after changing a record in level 0. You will now get this reminder highlighted in yellow that reminds you that you need to rerun the verification report. Okay. In addition, there are a couple of other places where you will see reminders to run or rerun the verification report. Under the reports for each domain, if a change has been made, you will see a message appear above the Run Verification Report box that will remind you, as in the top screenshot here, to rerun the report. And does anybody remember the hierarchy? As a reminder, for example, you must migrate demographics before you can migrate enrollment. If you make a change to demographics, you will see a message on the Enrollment tab reminding you to rerun the Enrollment Verification Report, since the demographic change could affect the enrollment verification errors. In other words, these reminders messages are smart enough to take the hierarchy into consideration. So once we upgrade to release 19.02, you will likely start to see these messages since these are common scenarios. Moving on to the next enhancement. Again, this is designed as a reminder in the area of the day calendar and student daily attendance domains. Let's say you've imported and migrated day calendar and student daily attendance. Afterwards, while you are celebrating and having a nice cup of tea, you discover an error in day calendar. Let's say a snow day wasn't added to your SMS. If you update day calendar to correct this oversight and then migrate again, this warning message will appear to remind you that it is recommended that you migrate student daily attendance again also. Now, to be honest, if it were me, those two are pretty much linked together, and if I imported day calendar and migrated it, I would automatically do student daily attendance. But this is just a reminder, just in case there's somebody relatively new and doesn't understand the connection between the two. Okay, moving on to the assessment area. This screenshot may look somewhat familiar. Last year, a pre-check was added for Programs Fact that showed the number of records in the import file versus the number of records currently in level 0. You were then able to check or uncheck each program category to either include that data or not in the import. I really like seeing this information before I import, and I'm so excited that the pre-check option has been added to the assessment domain now also. Just a reminder though, for Mid-Hudson-RIC districts, you will never import Regents or Nicetel, since our testing department takes care of this for you. Also note that on this particular screenshot that the Alt-Reg and CCR categories that we were familiar with from the past are no longer on there and have been replaced with the ADV or advanced category, which combines those two separate categories. Any questions so far?
No questions in the chat,
Okay.
Pam.
All right, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so moving on to the data quality reports area. If you look under courses and Regent State course codes, you can generate a list of all your courses that are linked to the Regents assessments. This is always a good report to run prior to having Regents answer sheets printed. Please note a change for 23-24. We've mentioned it before, but just in case it's still on your to-do list, the state course code that is linked to the Algebra 1 Regents is now 02050. Although 02052CC from the Common Core curriculum days is still listed, the last administration of that Regents was in January. Okay, and another minor tweak that I'm really excited about, because it fixes a pet peeve of mine. Notice that in the course section term column, it previously, if you were to export this report and open it in Excel, the data would be converted to a date that displayed as something like 01 January or 01 February. They have added the text section and term to prevent this conversion. I'm hoping that they will add this in all places that have this type of data. But since we don't actually have the release yet, I can't tell you for sure. But given that they've changed it in one place, I expect that eventually we'll see it changed in all places, and therefore my pet peeve will be gone. Okay. And again, in the data quality reports, but under the enrollment category, the crisis code subgroup has been added to this report. Also a reminder on this report that it reports the most recent enrollment. So for example, if you had a student who was enrolled with a 4034 for a preschool referral and is now receiving services and enrolled with a 0011, that student would show under the 0011 column and not the 4034. If you want to see all 4034 enrollments at any time during the year, you'll want to check the reasonableness report at level 2. I love doing the straightforward slides, no questions. So moving on to the level 1 data prep area and a little more on the assessment side of things. Yes, I know you can see that Alt-Reg and CCR are still options here, even though I just told you that they've been combined into ADV. They are only here for prior year data if needed, so you won't be using them. The exciting news here for us is that the regions category is not available. Notice it is grayed out. There will be an option in the new release that allows us to turn off the ability to migrate regions data to level 1. Since, as I mentioned, our testing department takes care of this for you, there's not a need for you to migrate regions. So this will allow us to ensure that it doesn't happen. I also mentioned that our testing department will handle Nicetel. And unfortunately, as of yet, we don't have the option to turn that off as well. But this is a good start to ensure that our Regents exams are not loaded accidentally. Any questions on that?
No questions in the chat.
Great. I don't know if they've had their coffee yet or but as I said, it is fairly straightforward information. One more item on the new release. I saved the best news for last. As you know, migration is a two-step process: validate and then create. Well, for your convenience, it can now sometimes only require one step. If you have recently run a verification report and there were no errors, you will not need to rerun the verification again as part of the level 1 data prep. All you will need to do is click on create. If I could see all your faces, I'm sure I would see some smiles from those folks who have realized that this will save you some time, especially when you're migrating your student daily attendance data. It should go a little bit more quickly. All right, any questions on the new release of level 0? We will
No
notify you
questions.
when it is available, and fingers crossed it's all going to work as promised, and we're going to see all of these wonderful new enhancements. Okay. So some more new stuff. A new level 2 report. Some of you have already probably taken a look at this, but let's talk about what's happening. The SIRS 657 discrepancy report. The purpose of this report was to ensure accurate data for students testing at an out-of-district location. Obviously, the location will be important, as will the grade level, which will determine the test to be administered. We have just begun working with this report since it's new and are learning as we go. The report can be found in the annual outcomes folder. The basic purpose of this report is to review all 0055 enrollments. Think of all your students enrolled at BOCES or other out-of-district locations, and to compare the information reported on the 0055 enrollment to the information reported by the accountable or responsible district. In other words, the district that's reporting the 0011. The following discrepancies will appear on the report: location discrepancies, grade level discrepancies, and 0055 enrollments that do not have a 0011 enrollment. Right? We've got a little bit more information on that next. So the screenshots show in yellow the information that is included in the report from the 0055 enrollment. And then in blue, the information that is reported from the accountable or responsible district, in other words, the 0011 enrollment. And finally, in the green area, you will see an indicator of what type or types of discrepancies were found. Okay, there are some instances where you will see that a record has a discrepancy in location and grade level. Okay, So far, while reviewing these reports, we have found everything from 2 students linked to the same NICES ID, a district reporting a student enrolled in an out-of-district location, but the out-of-district location shows the student at a different school, grade level discrepancies, and students who are reported by the 0055 entity with a different district of residence than where the 0011 enrollment is reported. So what do you do with this information? And the answer is, it depends. For a grade level discrepancy, you will want to reach out to the location where the student is enrolled to discuss and resolve the discrepancy. In most cases, this will likely fall to your special education team since they are in communication with the out-of-district locations. A location discrepancy will likely be handled in a similar way, unless it isn't. There may be occasions where the data does not make sense and some additional investigation is needed. I've found that the SIRS 750 student profile report, along with information in the NICES system, to be helpful in these circumstances. As each situation is unique, so this is, you know, a beginning, and I'm sure it will lead you down a path, and hopefully to a resolution for the discrepancies. Any questions on that?
No questions in the chat yet.
All right.
Oh wait, we just got one.
Whoops.
I
Can you
retract
please
that.
review when the 0055 enrollment code is used under what enrollment situations? Okay, so a 0055, the easiest way to understand that is the most common scenario where the district enrolls the students and they're placed at a program at their local BOCES on a either full-time or part-time basis. The district would enroll with a 0011, and the BOCES enrolls with a 0055, which is for instructional purposes only. So the district is the accountable entity with the 0011, and the BOCES is reporting attendance and courses and the data pertinent to the program that the student is enrolled in. Does that answer the question, Sherry? Okay. 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 What haircut? Thank you, John. Okay. With that, I'm going to move on to special services and turn it over to our special services team. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pam. So my name is Sarah Liner. For those of you looking at me thinking she looks really familiar, but I don't remember that name. I'm formerly Sarah Cross. Finally got around to changing my name after getting married over a year and a half ago. So Sarah Liner, again, a part of your special services team, along with my coworkers, Sean Cheatham and Samantha Villas. So I'm here today to talk to you about our lovely end of year state reporting and all that special ed data. So let's get to it. So as a little bit of a refresher of what's been going on this current school year in terms of our special ed reporting, in the past, the beginning of the school year, we've started our regular frontline IEP auto extracts, auto imports into level 0. That's your type of disability, section 504, alternate assessment, and section 504 safety net. Additionally, as you guys may have noticed, the SE snapshot for your bedstay snapshot, that started in the beginning of the year as well. And all of these run through a whole school year. Currently, what are we working with? Well, the SE events extract, those started much earlier than in years past. We did talk about this at our last DDC meeting about the SE events starting earlier. So we're just going to refresh a lot of that information today. Those started in November, and I'll get into more detail about what that entails in some slides later on. In the future, what is up and coming? Well, we have the rest of our end of year snapshots. So that's our SE snapshot, the EOI snapshot, and our assessment fact extract, which is our COSIF for indicator 7. These won't start until June, and they'll run all the way through to the end of the school year in preparation for their certification dates. So those guys stay the same, just the changes with the SE events this year. Moving on. So our end of year / indicator data prep trainings. So for all the information that I am about to review with you, we do host virtual workshops for our special ed offices to help them review this data, where it's coming from at a frontline. How do we correct anything that's showing up as an error in level 0, what certification looks like, all that fun stuff. So you know, I hold these for the special ed offices, but in the past, I have had some DDCs join us, and the feedback that we've received from them is that they find it valuable. There is some information that does pertain to them, and it helps you guys and the special ed offices understand the data to work together a little bit better. So if you would like to participate, or you just want more information about the workshops that we host, send us an email. Our joint email is specialservices@mhric.org. So we'll get you on that email list. And or if you just want more information about like what they look like, what they entail, all that stuff. You know, they are directed towards the special ed team. You know, we go into the frontline side of things, but there is a lot of information related to the data process as well that you might be interested in. So the workshops that we host, we'll be starting off in the end of April with our indicator 7. That's only applicable to a few of you guys. And then we'll move on to our other virtual workshops, the SE events and the end of year, and those will be hosted for all of our districts. So indicator 7, SPP indicator 7, also known as VR15. SPP stands for State Performance Plan, meaning it's a planned indicator, and it's one of those indicators that falls on a rotational basis, meaning not every district has to worry about that every year. In fact, your district only has to certify this specific indicator once every 6 or 7 years, it works out to be. So the districts that I have on the screen, those are the ones responsible for the 23-24 school year who have it due. If you think you have it due, but you don't see your name on this list, reach out to me. We can look at some things. There are some scenarios where districts have been asked to redo it. Say you just had to do 7 last year. NYSEN might have asked you to redo it. It could be a scenario like that, but we can get into it. What is your indicator 7? This is your preschool child outcomes summary form. Could you just go back for me, Helen? I'm so sorry. So this is just taking a look at that COSIF form in Frontline IEP. Again, the data source for all the information I'm going to be talking to you about is Frontline. The extract that it's a part of is called the assessment fact extract. Once it gets to level 0, it's the assessment /COSIF. In the PD system, it's going to be the VR15, and your certification date is August 5th, 2024. Now we can take a look at the next slide just to see what it looks like in level 0. Again, it's a part of that assessment section, and you want to make sure we're checking off COSIF. And we don't see this just yet. This is going to start June 10th with your number 21 import, and it's going to go through the end of the school year to prep for that certification date in August. And moving on. Okay, so some big changes. Again, we did talk about this a little bit at our last DDC meeting, but I want to stress it again just because of all these changes. We want to make sure you guys are aware. So for the 23-24 school year, there have been changes to the SE events, and that is your indicator 11 and your indicator 12. Your district has definitely heard, hopefully, from NYSEN about what group your district falls into. Some districts, like the districts that fall into group 1, they've been required to submit this data all year round at 4 important dates. We did talk about that at our last DDC meeting. Those were January 12th, April 12th, July 12th, and then the final one being in September. Only required to submit that data. That's why our SC events started importing into level 0 so much earlier than before. Typically, we started them all in June, but NYSED wants this data early, so we had to start that back in November. We also have groups 2 and groups 3. So really the main change we want to focus on is everybody, all districts, have to submit data for your SC events, no matter what group you fall into. Then it comes down to when you have to submit the data and do you have to certify? And that's what the different groups mean. So if you have any confusion around this, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Or if you're unsure of what group your district falls into, you can certainly reach out to your special ed office. They probably know the information, but if there's still some confusion after that, again, reach out to me. I can definitely find out for you and let you know and help you with all of these new changes. So let's move on to actually talk about what these indicators are. Indicator 11, this is your child find timely evaluations and eligibility for CPSC and CSE school age children. What that means is this is your new referrals for preschool and school age children. Was their evaluation held in a timely manner? Did their meeting happen within 60 days of receiving that consent? That sort of scenario. It's that whole referral process that this data report is looking at. Again, the source of the information where this comes from is Frontline IEP. It's the SE event extract. In level 0, it's the SE event, the PD system, where the VR11, and the certification for this one and the other SE events is September 9th, 2024. And you can see how I have my districts broken down on the side here. Everybody, again, you're required to submit data. Groups 1 and 2 are required to certify, and group 3, you're just encouraged to certify. So let's get into indicator 12. Indicator 12 is your early childhood transition. So similarly to indicator 11, we're looking at the referral process, but for a different demographic of students, much smaller. In fact, this is only looking at new referrals to CPSE from early intervention. So for some of our districts, this might be just a handful of students. All the same information applies where it's coming from. It's a part of the SE events extract. It's a part of the SE event in level 0 and the same certification date of September 9th, 2024. The only difference I really want to notate for you guys is just because your district was, say, group 1 for indicator 11, doesn't mean you're group 1 for indicator 12. In fact, most of the time this year, I've seen a group 1 and group 3, a group 2 and group 3, or, some combination of that. So just because you have to say certify for 11 doesn't mean you have to certify for indicator 12. So again, if there's some confusion on that, just send me an email, let me know. I do see a question in the chat. Let me get there. I think somebody asked earlier if my personal email changed. Yes, it did. But if you still send it to scross@mhric.org, it will still come to me. But I will throw my email in the chat after. So the question is, how do we know if our districts are in group 1, 2, or 3 for the VR11 or 12? So your special ed office most likely already knows. NYSED did reach out to all of our districts to let them know what they're in. But if you still don't know, Sherry, you can certainly send me an email and I can look up to see what your district is. Not a Okay, great. All right, moving on. But this is our VR14. It is a part of our SC events. However, all of our districts were required to certify this data every year anyways. So there's no real change to this, but we will still review the information. What's the VR14? It's a district report of parentally placed students in non-public schools who were evaluated. So we're sensing the theme here with the SC events. They all have to do with those new referrals and students who were evaluated. We're just looking at different demographics of students. In this particular case, it's just for your parentally placed students in a non-public school. So you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, well, we don't have any non-public schools within our district. I guess I'm off the hook. Not quite. Oh, did everybody lose their screen? Okay. So not quite. If you don't have any non-public schools within your district, you do still have to certify as 0. So just keep that in mind. Just because you don't have any students who were referred this year, or you just don't have any non-public schools within your district, you are still responsible for certifying that as 0. And along with all the other SC events, the certification date for this is also September 9th, 2024. All right, and we can move on to the next. Okay, so that was all about our SE event data. Now we're moving on to the stuff that you might be more familiar with, just because we do have to look at it every single year. And this is our end of year snapshot. So what's that? It's our preschool children who were provided programs and services during the 23-24 school year. So 23-24 school year, meaning from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. If a preschool child received programs and services at any point, even just for one day, they will be included on this report. So a little bit different than our bed stay snapshot, looking at the same demographic of students, but a broader time range. The source of this information, our favorite thing, like always, is Frontline IEP. It's called the end of year snapshot. In level 0, it is the SE snapshot or end of year snapshot. In the PD system, it's the VR13, and this certification date is August 5th, 2024. So this is your soonest special ed reporting certification date. And again, all districts are responsible for reporting, submitting, and certifying their data for this one. Moving on. It's just a snapshot of what it looks like in level 0. Again, it's part of that SE snapshot, but we want to make sure we're selecting the EOI snapshot and not our bed stay, because they are a little bit different. And again, these will begin with your import number 21, run through the end of the school year to get ready for that August certification date. Okay, so last but not least, in terms of the special ed end of year reporting, we have our CEIS and our CCEIS. That is our coordinated early intervening services and comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. This is not applicable to every district. This is only applicable for the CEIS portion of things if your district voluntarily used up to 15% of your IDEA funds for certain services, or if you have been mandated by New York State, that's the CCEIS portion of things, to use those funds. And if at any point you have used those funds for certain services in the last 3 reporting years, you'll be required to keep on reporting. So there is no list out at the moment for new districts, which can take a look at years past data, to see if you've been on it in the years past. Typically, the website that I have at the bottom of this slide, NYSA doesn't update that till we are well within our workshops that happen late spring. So think end of May timeframe, that's usually when they update it, but most likely your district has heard before this list is updated. So again, the years that we're looking at are 2021 to 22, 22 to 23, and 23 to 24. So this is one that we'll have to keep updating to see if your district is responsible for reporting and certifying on this data. Moving on. Okay, so lastly, I would like to talk to you about our Title I Part A data. So this is only applicable to my frontline RTI and my RTI Edge districts. So the Mid-Hudson Special Services team does offer to pull your Title I data from either frontline RTI or RTI Edge and upload it to level 0 for you, or upload it to a secure link so you guys can upload it yourself into your level 0. We started this much earlier this year. The special services team, we were trying something new because we have to get these authorization forms out to your district and then receive them back. So we thought starting it earlier would be a good idea, just so we can have everything and hit the ground running when we need to import in January. And it seemed to work out pretty good. So I think that might be the trends that we carry on going forward. So you heard from us in I think in November we sent them out, and then we started importing shortly after as we got them in. If you are sitting there thinking to yourself, you haven't seen your Title I data and you want to double check, see if you make sure your district sent back that authorization, or maybe we missed something on our end, definitely reach out to us. I will take a look at that for you. But again, this is only for our frontline RTI and our RTI Edge districts. And I believe that's all I have. Oh, yes, there it is. So there's my new email on the screen, sliner@mhric.org. If you still email the Sarah Cross one, I will still get it, so don't worry about that. But please, please, please always utilize our joint email as well, just in case one of us is out of the office, or myself, if you're looking for information directly from me. If it goes to the joint email, there'll definitely be somebody available to help you with all of your questions.
Sarah, you have a comment from Sherry? I think it's just a note. Can you see them, or should I read that?
Yeah, I can read it out loud. So Sherry
Okay.
says, FYI, districts who are not using frontline RTI still need to report their Title I data. It results in federal money for the district. Also, if you can clarify the difference between Title I improving basic programs versus school-wide, that would be helpful. So yes, Sherry, you're right. All districts do have to report their Title I data. We just don't submit the data for districts who don't use frontline RTI or RTI Edge, because those are the RTI products that we support here. Clarifying basic programs versus school-wide. I'm not familiar with basic programs. Maybe one of the data team members does, but
yes, Sarah, I can address that if you'd like.
yeah, because I could tell you the difference between targeted assistance versus school-wide, but Michelle, you
If
would
I
Well,
like
I
to?
think that's what she's speaking about, the difference between targeted and school-wide. Because that's the two different, avenues that you have for Title I Part A funding. So if it's, if it's Title I school-wide, and to know which funding you have, you should work with your business office or your business official to know what funding you're receiving. A lot of times this would be entered into your SMS if you're not utilizing our services here. So Title I school-wide would be something that you're receiving using those funds in a school-wide situation, maybe for one building in your district or all buildings in your district, because there can be a mix of how the funding is received and utilized within the district as well. I mean, you could have some buildings that are school-wide and some buildings that are targeted. The main difference is that with school-wide, you're just reporting a funding code. 0411. With targeted assistance, it is targeted to specific groups of students. And in that case, you are using the Title I targeted funding. So you're using a funding code, but then in addition, when you do targeted, you also need to report a subject area that it's associated with, or subject areas if it's multiple. And so there are additional codes, these are all in the SIRS manual, that you would use to then indicate what subject areas. Is it math? Is it, English? Is it, there's a list there, and you would give them one or more of those records under program services as well.
And
Yes,
Sherry
that
also,
was awesome. Sorry.
Sherry also mentioned that the business official, she believes they have to choose one or the other when they submit the consolidated application in the fall. So they should know what they put on.
Yes, they should know. While I'm speaking, I just want to put another plug in for the workshops that our special services team provides, and that Sarah works with the districts. Even if, as the DDC, if you're not planning to attend, I think it's good to reach out to your special education folks and see if they are signed up, if they are attending, because these are very targeted to those specific indicators, and it's going to help them resolve any issues that then result in errors in level 0. So it's kind of really a win-win situation here, because if they're receiving that assistance, then there's going to be fewer errors on the level 0 side. So that means less time that you're taking to reach out to your special ed folks to try to resolve those errors after the fact. So I highly recommend that every district sign up for those workshops.
Yes, thank you so much, Michelle. I totally agree with everything you just said, and I will sort of wrap up here, but to answer the last question that just came in, is there a handy list of these workshop dates and times? We haven't announced them as of yet. The only ones that are set are indicators 7. But like I said, they run all the way from April through May and June. And there's plenty of, I think we do about 10 different sessions for all of these. So there's plenty of times to join them. So I will get those out ASAP. Janet, if you would like to hear and get on that email list, shoot me an email and I will add you to that. And that's all I have. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Our special guests from the Mid-Hudson Migrant Education Program are not with us yet. They're going to be joining at about 10 o'clock. So we're going to skip over them for the time being and go to hopefully data reporting and reminders. We'll just do a couple of these slides until our guests join us at 10 o'clock. So Pam, you're up.
Thanks. I'm back. All right, so I'm going into parent mode, and we'll start with reminders, also known as nagging. Anyway, excuse me just a second to bring up the right screen. Okay, so our first reminder is on the crisis or disaster code. Okay, this code was created last year and is now part of the annual data collection. It should be reported for students in their first year of enrollment only. The student may or may not arrive with documentation. Students should be of compulsory school age and should have moved to the district due to a crisis or disaster. Okay, and disasters may include, but are not limited to, natural disasters, civil, health crisis, conflict, or a disaster-induced event. In addition to reporting the crisis indicator, if known, you will also report the disaster or crisis name. And this can be left blank if there isn't a name associated with it, or if you don't know the reason that prompted the move. And also remember, if this student qualifies, you should make sure you report the immigrant indicator as well, because that could be tied to some funding available to the district. Okay, so this is just a reminder. I know it started last year, And I think it's kind of fallen off the radar for some folks, but your registrars should be aware that if the situation applies, they should still be reporting the crisis indicator for these students. Okay, and the next one, next reminder is on public school registration process. And we mentioned this last year for the first time. It's not a new process. It's just, and it's not part of the data warehouse reporting. However, when this information is not reported and approved by SED, it could impact your ability to report your data correctly in the data warehouse. Many district administrators are unaware of the requirements since it does not happen frequently, so rely on you to spread the message. Okay, so SED must be notified whenever any of the following 4 scenarios listed here occur within your district. The district administration is not always aware that this process is required, and it may be overlooked. When a district registers a new school, it's usually fairly obvious. Plans are drawn up and submitted to SED, construction crews are hired. It's a big deal. And in this case, you are likely to be submitting the appropriate documents. But the registration of schools refers to more than just a new building. Are you closing a school? You may continue to use the building as an administrative office, but SED needs to be notified that students will no longer be housed in the building. Are you changing the grade organization within your buildings? Is 6th grade moving from the elementary school to the middle school? Are you adding a pre-K program within your K-4 building? Is the school moving to a new location within your district? Forms will need to be submitted in each of these cases. Here's how it works. A school district must first notify New York State Ed by emailing their intent to schoolregistration@nysed.gov and then submitting the appropriate forms via the business portal under ESSA funded programs. The deadline to submit this information is March 1st of the previous school year, which has already passed for this school year. If you are aware of changes to your district for next year, please communicate to your district administrators that submitting this information to SED is required. It's better to reach out now than wait for next year to find that your district is planning changes for It's better to reach out now than wait for next year to find that you cannot submit data. No promises, but SED will likely work with you to get this done. If your district is planning changes in future years, please keep this in mind that this step must be completed. Questions on this should be directed to the Office of Accountability via email at schoolregistration@nysed.gov or via phone at the number listed here. Okay, there were questions I saw.
Question.
We got a comment in there that from Shannon that my camera is off and it is telling me the host stopped my video. Can you still see our presentation, Shannon?
I did go ahead and stop everyone's video who was not a presenter.
Okay, all right. So that's what happened, Shannon. But as long as you can still see the video, we just try to cut down on bandwidth a little bit for all the cameras. And would this include adding pre-K to your building? I believe so, Sherry. That if you're adding a pre-K program, you should contact that number or that email and ask that question, and they should be able to tell you definitively yes or no that you need to submit the documentation. Okay, and we've got some additional comments. The request to NYSED also requires a BOE resolution to consolidate 2 schools into 1. That's from Donna. Thank you, Donna, for that piece of information. And okay, and Shannon's all set. Okay. Any other questions? I think I covered everything. All right. And we have a few more minutes. I think the next slide up is Michelle talking about AHSEP. That's only a couple slides, so should we continue with that, Helen?
Yes, because I saw Steve come in and then leave the room, so let's just
Okay.
continue.
Okay. All right, so last year as well as this year, we've had some districts encounter an import error in enrollment, specifically EE 2086, which states that compulsory age students cannot transfer to a GED program. Looking into the situation a bit further, it was discovered that the students were actually attending an alternative transition program. So the reason this error occurred is because a student can only be exited to a GED program in the school year following the year in which they exceed compulsory age, which means after the year in which they turn 16. However, they can transfer to an approved alternative transition program or ATP. So you might ask, what is an ATP program? Like GED programs, ATPs provide options for students who are at risk of dropping out of school to remain engaged in an alternative learning environment that focuses on their particular skills, abilities, and learning styles. However, ATPs are different from GED programs in that they are specifically for students of compulsory age. Districts must apply to a NYSET for approval of an ATP. Some more information regarding enrollment for students in ATPs are as follows. 0011 enrollment in the home district at the ATP location and 0055 in the BOCES or other LEA operating the program with appropriate location code. Are we still going on, or are our guests here?
They are not logged in yet. They're supposed to be logged in exactly 1 minute. So, rather than starting the next section, are there any
Yeah, any questions?
I mean,
I suppose let's
next-
go ahead on to the next slide.
yeah, let's do these are kind of one slide at a time kind of topics, so.
Let's go ahead.
All right, so I'll pass it back to Pam.
Yeah, here we go again. So recently, I see Amy there.
Amy just
Recently,
joined.
SED distributed several files to your IRS portals. One of those files showed which positions were reported for each school year. School counselors and social workers were listed in this report along with librarians. Although the other positions are reported through staff assignment, the librarians are reported through course and course instructor assignment. So it's a little more complex. Several years ago, SED introduced a course code to be used for library courses. It was originally intended to be linked to a teacher who was certified as a library media specialist and who works in the library but does not necessarily have responsibility for courses, and they are supplying support within the school setting. Okay, so think of your high school and your high school librarian who supports the other teachers in the building but doesn't necessarily have courses and students linked to them. So teachers assigned to a course using this course code were required to be a certified library media specialist, or they would show up as teaching out of certification. Using this course code, a significant number of teachers were reported as teaching out of certification in the prior to secondary setting. Okay. If the library course was reported with the 9900 course code, when no library media specialist was assigned to the building. Recognizing this situation, last year, SED introduces another new course code that can be used for library courses in a prior to secondary setting. Course code 99899 can be used when a certified library media specialist is not assigned to a prior to secondary building. This should help to decrease the instances of teachers reported as out of certification when assigned to a library course. Note, though, you must report a certified teacher linked to the course and section. You still cannot report teaching assistants or principals or any other staff member. If the report you received in the portal shows that no librarians are reported in one or more of your buildings, it is likely that the appropriate library course code is not being used. You may have library specials scheduled, but they may not be linked to the 99899 state course code, so they would not show up as having a librarian in the building. So, if your buildings do not have librarians reported, you will first need to ensure that the library course is reported in each building and linked to this appropriate state course code, and then ensure that a teacher, library media specialist if available, is linked to each section of the course. One more point. The 99899 is only valid for prior to secondary, but the 9900 is valid for all grades levels. So if you do have a library media specialist assigned at an elementary building, you could use the 9900 course code for that library course. Any questions on that?
Just to clarify, that code is 99000, not 9900.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I don't see teaching out of certification report in the IR. No, it's not. The reports were distributed from state ed. It's not the teaching out of certification. It's, what was the name of that report? I'll get that for you, Sherry. Yeah, the CERS, the out of cert report you can generate at level 2, but I'll send you the names of those files, that file that had that information. Okay. So any other questions there?
There's a question higher up, but it's going back to Michelle's ATP, I believe.
Let's leave that for after our special guests who
Okay,
have
perfect.
joined us.
Okay.
Pam, do you want to wrap that slide up?
Yeah, I'm
real-
going to wrap
real
up the
fast?
slide and we'll catch up when we come back. Now, if you're having trouble getting excited about this task, take a moment to watch the short video that is linked here. Michael's a viral social media phenom, and his enthusiasm for all things library is really infectious. So, you know, if you want to change of pace, go ahead and watch the video, and it will re-excite you about everything library. It's a wonderful video. All right.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay.
And without further ado, because I know that we have some time constraints, we're going to go right ahead and greet our special guests. I want to give a warm welcome to Amy Shapiro and Steve Wendell of the Migrant Education Program, whose offices are at SUNY New Paltz. Amy Shapiro is the new director of the Mid-Hudson Migrant Program, and she began her career in education as a math leader in the South Bronx. Since then, she has worked in a variety of different educational contexts, including heading a fellowship for beginning math teachers at Math for America, teaching middle and high school math and science at an independent school in the Hudson Valley, and most recently, directing a college program inside Fishkill Correctional Facility. She just started in her current role as director of the Mid-Hudson Mets in mid-January. And also today we have with us Steve Wendell, who is the data manager at the Mid-Hudson Migrant Education Program. Mr. Wendell is a Rockland County native, as am I. Hi, Steve. Who emigrated to faraway Orange County, where he still resides, and he graduated from Newburgh Free Academy. So shout out to our visitors from Newburgh today. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Spanish language, as well as a Juris Doctorate from Penn State, with which he practiced law in Dutchess County. He is also a veteran of the U.S. Navy, where he served on an aircraft carrier. So thank you for your service, Steve. He has also worked with migrant education for over 20 years in multiple capacities, and now serves as their data manager with a caseload approaching 1,000 migrant eligible students. So thank you so much for joining us today, Steve and Amy.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you, Amy, and nice to see you again, Steve.
Nice to meet you
Thank
too.
you so much.
I think today is my the anniversary of 2 months in this job. So I'm still have a lot to learn, although it's starting to make sense. But so I'm going to let Steve lead us through this document that we've created for all of you.
Okay, so first I apologize for that lengthy bio. That was meant to be like a bouquet of spring flowers, and you could have chosen one. Things that were relevant. I haven't given a bio in about 15 years since I spoke at Vassar once on behalf of the program. But thank you for welcoming us, and also thank you, Helen, especially for allowing us to be part of this day and to be in front of this group. It's invaluable to us to have our presence. The more often we can be known, the more it grows us exponentially. And so for any of you who are new, I hope this will be, an enjoyable data discussion about what it is that migrant ed and school districts have in common. But it wouldn't be possible if Helen didn't just, automatically reach out to us every year and welcome us back. So thank you for that. And so then in front of our new director, who the biggest thing our new director needs is a coordinator, but the state doesn't plan to provide that anytime soon. So as Amy will find out, she'll be delegating endlessly. And so it's not unusual that I would give this speech and that you just get to be familiar with it and meet all the great data experts from around the Mid-Hudson and Lower Hudson region who educate me all the time on data during our interactions. So, and to flesh it out just a little more, our needs as a program, just by what might seem like a little things that you do by coding the students properly for us, and some of you go as far as to provide report cards for us, getting that certificate of eligibility from the superintendent's office and having it on hand, all these things that fit into the compliance, as they call it at state ed. Every step that you take, any attention that you give us like that is just so greatly appreciated. You are the most important group from where I sit. You're the most important group that influences how well we can provide the services that we provide, and it's ever improving. And so, if that's enough buttering up, I'd like to go on to there's a document that we prepared that has 4 topics on it, and actually it has 5. 4 big events that happened during the year between school districts and migrant ed. And again, I apologize if you've seen me do this 4 or 5 times. Thank you for your patience. It'll be a good review. And if you're new, this is what we're all about in terms of collaboration and working together. So when the school year starts off, we get a deadline. It's usually around September 1st to get to every district a letter called the lunch letter, affectionately. That goes to your superintendent. It goes to you as the data office, and then to the food service office, just trying to make sure everyone gets off on the right foot with children who are entitled to that free lunch. And it seems more districts than ever are providing a free lunch. Where my children go to school, Pine Bush, just changed over this year. It was a pleasant surprise for us, I guess. So the main point, I guess, is anytime one of these letters come, whether it's the lunch letter or the other items that we'll describe, so I'll make this blanket statement up front. Everything that I share out is from the migrant ed's perspective, right? We have recruiters who go out in the field and they sign people up for our program. Sometimes they sign them up at lunch hour outside of a grower's plant. Sometimes it's literally in the Black Dirt region. More often that's out of school youth, but it's never in an office setting, right? It's never where someone has shown up with documents, with exact birth dates and places of birth and names. So our data absolutely relies on this interaction with you as district. So when I send that lunch letter, there will likely be students who should or shouldn't be on that list. There will be students whose names are spelled wrong. And this is the part where I always ask for the patience and appreciate all the patience that you afford us. And that we try to improve all the time, but it is a struggle that goes beyond even just incorrect data. There are times of the year when we have to do reconciliation, for example, or this even can come up in monitoring if we look at the lists at that time, where students don't attend the building that they might have originally enrolled to attend, right? They get sent to a BOCES, they get sent to a newcomers program. And from my end, my data system doesn't have designations for those, for those facilities. So it will end up that while it should, while I have a choice to put the high school or the school district in the facility name, when I put the district, because the student goes to BOCES and there is no code for that in my system, it shows as an error. It's something that can cause our data to conflict and to make it seem like it conflicts, as if I'm not reporting the student, you're not reporting the student. So that's why the process is so, I don't want to say tedious, but it certainly is laborious to go through the list and get clarity. Sometimes, there's a district with 150 migrant students in it. That's a Herculean effort on your parts. And even when it's 30 students, when it's 12 students and you're a district that only recently ever had your first migrant students, it just tends to be a time consuming process. And I know it's just one extra thing on your plates. And so we appreciate, again, all the attention you give us with that. So moving on from the lunch letter and the big qualification around our work together, we'll move into February. Last month, we reached out to approximately 20 districts, right, who were chosen by state ed to be monitored for Title I compliance. We've reached out to every one of the districts for districts that were undergoing targeted monitoring and coordinated monitoring. The process has been completed. We're still working with desk review districts. We're almost halfway through, I think, with districts, replying to us. This is a process. And what we have on the screen kind of spells out the scope of what state ed anticipates districts will do on behalf of, in collaboration with, migrant ed. And so I'll just go through them, try to go through them quickly. This is the short version of the compliance indicators, right? That at least annually, districts will work with migrant ed to verify the student data and address the non-matching data. That is, either just come up with an explanation for it or correct it. If you tell me the student that I have the wrong student birthday, I correct that to the correct student birthday, and then the lists match. So the state runs the list, sends me all of the discrepancies, and then I start reaching out to all of you to try to correct them. Second, during the school year, maintain current lists of students backed with the copies of certificates of eligibility sent to your district by state ed, right? So it's within a couple of weeks to a month, you will receive the certificate of eligibility, which is the gold certificate that says this student truly is migrant, and that then springs the necessity to code them as migrant in the level 2 system. And maintaining them can be a challenge because not all superintendent's offices, right? Again, it's about whether you're a district who regularly has migrant students and whether a practice like this is set up. If you're not, then it's super helpful to us if you might seek out those documents from the office. You will also hear from our office directly when a new eligible student is in your district, right? Right away, we'll send to you a copy of the certificate of eligibility. We sort of jump the gun on state ed's formal declaration just because we know the students are in the building and they may or may not be getting free lunch yet, and they may or not be getting other accommodation that they might be entitled to, and allows our tutors to be able to communicate with teachers if you have that release, the certificate of eligibility in hand. So while the state sends it on a more calendar basis, maybe once a month, we try to get them to you sooner. So they're also asking that number 3, you would utilize the parent survey questionnaire, right? That's to screen for eligibility at registration. So it's been many a time that the data specialist or CIO or director, you have many titles, I find, have been instrumental in helping get the registrar's office on board with using this form, that when families come and sign up for school, they get asked on this form, have you ever worked in farm work? Have you moved recently? And that's the process that helps us grow from 500 students to 1,000 students. And with your help, that can continue to grow, make sure that that's being used at registration. Number 4 is to collaborate with the METS program by sharing critical educational and health information for migrant eligible students. Because Title I Part C migrant education is not administered directly through the schools, we are completely dependent, about 95% dependent on the districts. And often that falls with you or whoever you can help point us to be able to collect the information we need. Let's see. So I think that covers. Okay. I'm working on my phone here. My tablet crashed, so forgive me. March to May. And I think we're doing just okay on time. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you can write them in the box so you don't forget them in the chat box, or at the end, hopefully there'll be a little bit of time to field some questions. So right now, March through, I think it extends through May, we go through the actual data reconciliation process where the state has sent me the list of students who don't match between your list and my list. I am behind in that process already. One thing I really owe Helen, and I really appreciate is the out of office message that you left. I've adopted, where it says like I'm working on special projects. That has been invaluable to me. So thank you for that. I did nothing but learn by interacting with this group. Let's see. So for 23-24 on Friday, I sent out the first because it was the first district that called me and said, hey, I need to know. So thank you, Monticello, Aaron. And I now have Fallsburg knocking on the door, and I hope I'll be starting on that process this afternoon with only about 37 more to go. And I think they said in the letter from the state that I have 10 days left till March 29th. That's going to be tough. We have a lot of little fires that happen at migrant education, and it kind of gets in the way of, so that's why I have to move into special project mode. Okay, in June, the last calendar-based event is the migrant status report, we'll call it. This is where they want to formalize, after all the good work we do on data reconciliation, we will send you a final, like I can print what is called the SIRS list within my system, which I'm sure is the same data, so that we can close out the year and make sure that once it's closed out, all the data is as accurate as it could possibly be as between us, as between Migrant Ed and the district. So it's sort of like, a final closing out of reconciliation with that SIRS report letter. And I try to include, I think it was Monroe Woodbury, maybe Kristen Grandhair, who enlightened me that it would be really helpful for districts to have lists as the year closes out, knowing which students are ending their migrant eligibility so that you can uncode them at the end of the year. That keeps reconciliation cleaner going into the next year, so that because old students don't still show up. So I try to include that as part of the reconciliation process as well, though it might come closer to June for bigger districts. January through December. So this is all year, right? I put it on a calendar, call it calendar, but it's really the letter that comes from the state. It comes along with a copy of the certificate of eligibility. It's the notice to your superintendent that they have a new student. It requests that they forward the certificate of eligibility to principals, to all staff, to your offices, to food service office. It has different types of instructions on it. This is probably the most challenging part, that if we were, say, part of school districts, if we were in buildings, that the explanation of what state ed would like done with these documents might be a little easier to be understood by everyone and shared with everyone through the building. So if you haven't seen a copy of that letter, I'd like to refer you to the bottom of the page, where there is the link there for the New York State Migrant.org resources page. And on that page, you will see several different links you can click on to view the parent survey, for example, right, to the screening tool to see if students are eligible. And then I'll just close with pointing out my phone number. I don't know if you're screenshot people or that's my phone number, that I am always thrilled to hear from, and I really mean it, from data directors, CIOs, I don't know what to call you, data folks. Like anytime, I almost always end up taking something away. I always learn more about what's wrong with my data and how I need to fix it. But if you have questions or see clarity on anything, I do that regularly as a function, and you shoot a text, are you available, or, or just cold call, whatever it is.
Well, Steve, this is Pam.
Okay.
And I'm the chat monitor sometimes.
All right.
So there are a couple of comments in here for you. And Jamie made a comment about the end date of 3/29, but then he clarified that and said that the 3/29 date is the date by which the Met's office will reach out to the districts. And I know you've got a heavy workload with that, but it sounds like you're working toward that deadline to reach out to the districts. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
That's exactly right. That's what I saw.
Okay.
3/29.
And there's a question about, does Claire Boss work with you? And Amy answered that to say, yes, she does. And comment from Shannon. We wish SED would not have eliminated the program service for migrant. It gave us a history and school tool. Now, with only the demographic, we lose that. Okay, I know what you're talking about there. Yeah, that's something specific to school tool. That it is a checkbox rather than a start and end date. So it does make that a little bit more difficult for reporting. So, and Jamie agrees with you. That would be something perhaps to take up with student services regarding how that information is reported in school tool. Similar to what happened this year with the crisis indicator, where now they went from a checkbox to a date. So, you may want to bring that up, Shannon, with student services to see if any changes could be made in that area. Okay.
Or possibly there's the breakout session school tool as well.
Oh, yeah,
We
and yes,
discussed-
there
I
will
know.
be upcoming, as Sam mentioned, a breakout session with school tool that you could, maybe bring it up at that point. So I will make a note of it to mention to them also.
I know that.
Okay, that's it, Steve.
I know that Amy has a hard stop at 10:30, which is in 2 minutes and 11 seconds. So
It
these are
actually, my
any
meeting,
last-minute thing.
my meeting changed and I don't have to run, so
Oh,
I'm good.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, so you stay for the whole meeting then. Great.
We do have another meeting though with
Not till
another
11
state,
though now.
right? Right,
Oh,
11, yeah.
okay,
So we
okay,
can't
good.
make the whole 1 o'clock meeting,
Yeah.
but we appreciate the invitation.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know if there are any other curiosities at this point. We're just gonna do our best to get you lists just as soon as I can. I don't know how many I can get out a day because I have to do the work on them first, can I get out 5 a day for the next 10 days? That would do it. That's optimistic. And it includes Saturday and Sunday, so.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions for these kind folks, please help me thank them for joining us today and informing us on all of their procedures. It's always enlightening to hear more about it. I always learn something. So thank you so much, Amy. Good luck in your new position. And
Thank
Steve,
you.
as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
Okay.
us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thanks,
Yes.
you too.
Bye.
Bye.
So folks, with that, we are going to take our first of 2 10-minute breaks. It's 11, let's say it's 11:30 almost right now. And we'll meet back here at 11:40. Enjoy your break. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the break and seeing some springtime flowers growing. We're gonna start back with data reporting and reminders. We did already look at the crisis disaster codes. Pam went through that before we had our special guests. We also looked at the PSR process, the process for registering public school registration process. We did look at OSEP with Michelle, as well as the alternative transition program. And I think we capped it off with library. Before we get started with our next grouping of topics, were there any questions on any of those topics that I just mentioned, or did Pam or Michelle want to say anything before we moved on to 9th grade?
Yeah, I just wanted to catch up. I reviewed through the chat, and any questions that we didn't answer directly, I just want to bring to the attention to everybody in the meeting in case you're not, reading every single thing in the chat. Ann Lytle. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
I just had to hear your voice.
So good to hear and see everyone. Yeah.
I can't see you, but anyway. Okay, so you had asked a question about the compulsory school age. There are several areas in New York State that do have a compulsory school age of 17, not the typical 16. I know Syracuse is one of the districts that has that. And the way to do that, according to the documentation at State Ed, is that the Board of Education must approve it. In each district, the Board of Education shall have power to require minors from 16 to 17 years of age who are not employed to attend upon full day instruction until the last day of session in the school year in which the student becomes 17. So that seems to be a Board of Ed action is required in order to do that.
That is perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, next area was, Sherry was asking about the reports on the IRS portal. And I'm going to post the name that I have for the 3 reports. The report they posted to your portal may have a slightly different name. It may have your district's name in there. The first one that I posted in the chat, the select staff positions. Now, these reports were posted on February 27th. So the first one on select staff positions is the one that would have information on the librarian and counselors and whatnot within your district. The other 2 were simply posted at the same time that also contain other information that you may want to review. Okay. The next question was from Gabby. And the question was, do they have to have a teacher certification at the elementary level? I assume we're talking about the library media library courses. And can they be a certified teacher assistant? They cannot be a teacher assistant. They must be a certified teacher. It can be a certification in any area, but it must be a teacher certification. Okay, and then finally, Omar in Newburgh asked for the library course code 99899, which is prior to secondary. What grade levels does that cover? And Mike responded, and he got it right. And the answer is K through 6 are considered prior to secondary. Actually, I might amend that to say pre-K through 6, because sometimes we have a pre-K building within an elementary school. So, but that's, and they go to their library specialists as well. And when will the IRS reports get updated again? I do not know. They haven't spoken about that, Kristen. We can double check on that at our next level 1 call. No, Sherry, they don't show teachers teaching out of certification. That would be found in the 328. Okay, I think you're just confirming what was mentioned before. Okay. Is there a level 2 verification report that we could use to do the same thing? It won't show omissions, Kristen, but you can look at, I believe it's the 320, which shows your assignments for, you know, you'd have list all your counselors, and then you'd have to by process of elimination, see if there was a school that didn't have a counselor assigned. Library would be a little bit more difficult. You'd have to dig into course instructor assignment to see if there is a library course reported in each building. Sometimes it's easier to find that information just by looking at level 0 and listing the courses in each building, and do a control F and look for the word LIB or the text string LIB to see if you have a library course in each building. Okay, I'm not sure if that quite answered everything. Fast and furious text in here. Ask my team to help me if I missed anything.
One new one.
Well,
From
I
Michael.
think that the question from Mike Latino, the level 1 reports, you should contact testing services and they will have a breakout session, so you can speak with them then. Are we ready to move on? I think so.
Okay. So switching gears. And we're going to talk about grade 9. The grade 9 entry date is a critical piece of information that is used to determine a student's cohort and may impact accountability numbers. You may have noticed an informational error that is reported if a grade 9 entry date is reported that does not match what was reported in a previous year. Excuse me. There are times when it is legitimate to change a grade 9 date. However, last year, SED had noticed a much higher than expected occurrence of these changes. According to SED, the primary reason that a grade 9 entry date should be changed is when a district enrolls a student into high school who is non-English speaking and newly arrived in the United States. In this scenario, the student's level of literacy is in his or her native language is low. It may be difficult to determine the student's correct grade placement. SED guidance states that under these circumstances, excuse me, schools are allowed at least one year to determine the appropriate grade level for this student. Upon enrollment, the school should assign the student a grade level based on their best judgment. This temporary grade level should be reported in the first year of enrollment. Before the end of the second year of enrollment, the school must evaluate the student and determine the appropriate grade level. The school would then determine the year of first entering grade 9 from the grade level assigned to the student before the end of the second year. The initial temporary grade level should not be used to determine the year of entry into grade 9. Okay, so, excuse me. So that is the only substantial reason that SED feels you should be changing a grade 9 entry date. Other factors may also cause the grade 9 entry date to be reported incorrectly. Okay, a common scenario is grade 9 students who are retained in grade 8. Most districts roll their 8th grade students into 9th grade about midway through their 8th grade year to begin working on the high school schedule for the following year. Reality is such that some 8th grade students will likely be retained. Districts should ensure that for students who are retained in 8th grade, that all 9th grade entry information is removed from the SMS prior to reporting to the data warehouse. And one final situation which causes confusion about grade 9 entry dates is for ungraded students. The next slide has some details on how to determine the grade 9 entry date in that situation. Okay. The guidance to determine the grade 9 entry date for an ungraded student is as follows. The grade 9 entry date will be, number 1, the first school year during which the student enters a school where the earliest grade is grade 9. So if you have an ungraded student who enters a high school, that is their grade 9 entry date, the year in which they enter the high school. Okay, so if a student is in a school that has both grade levels below grade 9 and grade levels above grade 9, then the grade 9 entry date is determined by the student's first participation in a grade 9 program, such as 9th grade art, 9th grade PE. So if they take a 9th grade course, that the first year that they do that would be the year their grade 9 entry date. So, and then finally, if neither of those two situations occur, then the year in which the student turns 17 should be reported as their grade 9 entry date. Now, I've heard it mentioned that where people just go to the default and say, well, the year in which they turn 17. That's not the correct way. You need to determine if either of the other two conditions apply to the particular student to determine their grade 9 date. We'll say, since many ungraded students attend out-of-district placements, it's a bit more difficult to ensure that you have all the information needed to make this determination. The goal is to accurately determine this the first time so that the grade 9 entry date does not need to be changed. As difficult as this might be for your students who are placed out of district, it can be even further complicated for students who are coming to you from another district. You cannot always assume that the date has been calculated accurately. This is another case where the SIRS 750 can be very valuable if you want to review course information that the student has taken and enrollment information. And best practice may be to annually review all ungraded secondary students and verify their grade 9 dates. Any questions there? Okay. Our next reminder is about CTE data reporting. And at this point in time, the best thing we can do is give you some information about how to go about it. Firstly, and most important, is to plan for it. Put it on your calendar. And remember that counselors will likely be involved in reviewing this data. So don't wait until June. They'll be busy with graduation, and then quickly after that, they'll be gone for the summer. Okay, you want to make sure you communicate. Ensure you know who to call at both at the district and BOCES, because this is a collaborative effort, if you have questions. And then start early. Check out the reports as soon as they're available from the BOCES, because you'll want to review it now, as I said, when your counselors are still available. I know they're busy year round, but they tend to get a little bit more tied up toward the end of the school year with regents and graduation. Okay, I'm looking at the question from Amy. If a previous district, we're talking about the grade 9 entry date here, if a previous district has incorrect date, then the new district should and can adjust it. In that case, yes, I would say go ahead, because you want to report accurate information. Okay. And you're not accountable for what the previous district did. All right. All right, we are at the beginning of the intense verification time of year. It's almost as much fun as tax season, which I spent the whole weekend on. And the best part about both of these is basically when they're over. Michelle has already reviewed the due dates and timelines, but there's some additional details on each of the upcoming deadlines. To put it all together, this chart tries to takes a look at the upcoming due dates, and basically it shows when the data is due, what data is being pulled, where can you find the reports containing that data, why do you want to review it, and who do you want to include in the review of this data. The how is up to you. Note, the why is often related to funding and to the funding that the district will receive or not receive, or information that appears on the school's or district's report cards. In either case, you will want that information to be as accurate as possible. Make sure you or a member of your team are reviewing these reports. You should plan on reviewing the listed reports several weeks before the due date to give time to make corrections and verify those corrections. I won't read through the list, but you want to ensure that someone is reviewing the listed reports for programs within your district. Please note that the first two items on the list have a past due date. We've included them since they will be pulled again. So if you didn't get a chance to do a thorough review before the deadline, please do so now so that the corrections can be made before the next data pull. And finally, a reminder, well, not finally, but a reminder, when reviewing the level 2 reports, make sure you take a look at the report guides that explain the data contained in the reports. This can be very helpful when you are trying to interpret the results. And this is just a partial list. The available level 2 report guides change as State Ed creates new ones. And so check back at this link to see what is currently available. My next reminder is related to the Beds Day data pulls. Don't forget about the .1 reports, okay? They are available in the Beds folder at level 2. Currently, you will have a .1 report available for the January snapshot date. That was the Beds Day data pull in January. Compare this report to your current data for changes. Changes could have been made to correct inaccurate information, or a change may indicate that the current information is no longer accurate. Either way, it's a good idea to take a look and compare. The second data pull occurred last week. Very soon, you should have a .1 report or a snapshot available for both January and March, which can be compared to each other or used to compare for comparison before the final data pull in August. And just a little bit more information on that. One more important piece of information on the Beds Day reports, including the .1 reports. For all Beds Day enrollment reports, the total student enrollment, i.e. the all student category, is provided as well as enrollment by student subgroups. While the student enrollment count as of Beds Day is as of Beds Day, subgroup status is determined using program service data reported at any time during the school year. That is, if a student was a member of an accountability subgroup or program category, such as disability, LEP, economic status, at any point in the school year, then the student will be counted as a member of that subgroup for the entire school year. For example, a student enrolled in grade 9 on Beds Day, who was identified by the District Committee on Special Education as a student with a disability on December 1st, will be reported as a student disability in the Beds Day enrollment count for that school year, for that school and school district, even though they were not classified until after Beds Day. That's just an important point to keep in mind when you're trying to resolve any of those numbers. Okay. The next reminder is related to the upcoming staff and course data pulls in May. Resolving errors in these areas can be time-consuming, so make sure you're looking at the reports early. As you review that data, here's a list you may want to keep handy. This shows the courses that do not require corresponding student class entry exit records when such services are provided on an ad hoc basis where scheduling of students is not practical. If these apply to you, you want to make sure you're making use of them. Note that the AIS courses, denoted as supplemental, appear on this list. Also note that the library courses that we previously talked about appear on this list. Okay, so I feel like I've been nagging you. So many things to do. Have you cleaned your room yet? Oh no, wait, that was from another life. Don't worry, I'm almost done. I see a question, give me just a second. Is May the only date that matters for staff certification? Meaning, as long as the teacher is certified at that time, they won't appear on the out of cert list. Yes, the requirement from SED is that the teacher be certified before the data pull in May. So even if they've been in the course since September, as long as their certification is received before May, they will not show up on the out of cert report. Does that answer your question, Kathy? Okay, you're welcome. All right, so I'm almost done. And another reminder related to upcoming deadlines. This slide shows the definition of immigrant from the service manual. A couple of points here. Review your students to ensure all eligible students are reported as immigrant. And remember that immigrant status ends. You also need to review all students currently reported as immigrant to ensure they have been in the U.S. schools for less than 3 full academic years. And keep in mind that state means the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Children born to U.S. citizens abroad, including those born on military bases, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, and any other U.S. territory that is not the District of Columbia or Puerto Rico, are considered immigrants. Okay, that one sometimes slips through. That especially the part of students born on military bases, that they are considered immigrants. Okay, any questions on that? I'm done with reminding. So I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle for just a few more items on the reminder list.
Thanks, Pam.
You're welcome.
Okay, English language learners. English language learners, or L students, represent a specific subgroup that NYSED uses in its level 2 reports, and aggregate counts of Ls are provided on data.nysed.gov. The performance of L students is also an ESSA accountability metric. Records pertaining to L students are typically pulled several times a year for various reasons, such as NYSED slot testing or funding allocations. It is important, therefore, to make sure that L records are regularly imported to level 0 and migrated to level 2 throughout the school year. An English language learner is defined as a student who, by foreign birth or ancestry, speaks or understands a language other than English and who scores below a New York State designated level of proficiency on the NYSETEL or the NYSED slot. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, final L counts for Title III funding allocations, along with immigrant student counts, will be due in the May-June timeframe. We will notify you as soon as the exact date is released. Please note that these are counts of all L students at the time of the pull, not just the L students enrolled as of Beds Day. Let's review the pertinent reporting guidance related to L students. So an L student must be reported with an L eligibility record, which is the 0231 record, and in addition, an L program service code that identifies the type of services received. We'll get into those codes in just a minute. Students may also be reported. So if they're an L student, they may also, in addition, be reported with the 1232, which is students with inconsistent interrupted formal education, otherwise known as SIFE, and or 0242, eligible to take the NYSED slot. Now, full details about the criteria for SIFE and the eligibility for NYSED slot are in the SIRS manual. One item I do want to note about SIFE records is that the SIFE record must be ended when the student achieves a performance level of transitioning on the NYSED slot exam. Okay, so what about those L programs? So here is the list of L program codes I was just speaking of. You must report one of the following program codes when you are reporting an L eligible record, or you'll get an error in level 0. So those programs are 5709, English as a New Language, 5676, Transitional Bilingual Education, 5687, One-Way or Two-Way Dual Language Program, or 8239, L eligible but not in an L program. Additionally, students can be in only one of these L programs at a time, but they may participate in more than one during the school year. If they do participate in more than one, a program record must be provided for each, and the records must indicate the beginning and end dates of participation as appropriate. So on the L eligible record, so not on the L program record, but on the L eligible record, you also must identify the service level, which indicates what the service level that the student is receiving. So there are 3 codes available. They have full, so they're receiving the required units of study, partial, less than the required units of study, or none, not currently receiving a service. All right, so how do we go about doing this verification? So both the SIRS 650, the L profile report, and the SIRS 401 reasonableness report, which is the one shown on the screen, will list students reported as L at any time during the school year. So it's important to know what the requirements are for any related data pulls. So if you're doing verification throughout the year, what are you actually verifying? Is the pull for L students as of Beds Day? Is it for L students up through the date of the pull? Is it for L students for the entire year? Both reports will count all students who were identified as L up until the last refresh and will include students who were L at some point during the school year, but later transferred out of the district. An advantage of the SIRS 650 is that the report can be filtered on enrollment status of active, inactive, or all. So when verifying, make sure you know what data is being collected for that specific pull. Also review the data for both accuracy and completeness. The data that is included may be accurate, but you also want to make sure that there isn't any data missing. So just to reiterate, for May, June data pull, you want to verify the count of L students at the time of the pull, even though the reports may list students who left the district earlier in the year. That's okay, and nothing needs to be changed. Any questions about L programs, or L verification?
There is one.
Okay.
From Amy, are commanding L students considered since they still receive services? That's a good question.
No, when they reach commanding, they get moved into other categories, like there's formal L students for a certain amount of time and ever L students. So you would see them depending on, I think it's number, how long we're talking about. So they should be in one of those categories, but they wouldn't be in the L eligible or current L programs. So if you see on the reasonableness report on the slide there, you can see, if you can read that, underneath L eligibility, it does say former L and ever L.
Yeah, and
yes, they
Michelle,
are
if you don't
monitored.
mind,
Sure.
I wanted to add to that. There's sometimes a difference of understanding between the reporting part of it and what's happening in the district.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
students, once they test commanding, they're called monitoring for a couple of years. And so oftentimes when I've gotten a list of students, if you're talking to your ELL teachers and they're giving you the list of the students that they're working with, they may very well include students who are being monitored because those students are attending a class with them. So, but once they're commanding, they should no longer be reported, even though they do continue to receive services for another couple years.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to say, Pam.
Sorry.
We share that brain, but it's just one that's a reporting requirement, and the reporting requirement dictates that those things end, and the other is the practice that is going on within the district. So thank you. Any other questions?
No, wait a minute. I think monitoring code is used in Title III funding. I'm not sure. This is from Sherry. I think the monitoring code is used in Title III funding. I'm not sure which Title III program service you're referring to, Sherry.
Well, we don't report the Title III funding for L any longer. That's not required. So I'm not quite sure there. It's not a SIRS reporting. Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. There may be additional reports outside of the SIRS collection process that speak to Title III funding, but it is not part of SIRS any longer. Did we get to all the questions?
I think you did. We had some questions and answers and back and forth, but I think we handled all the questions.
Well, then with that, we are going to head toward our breakout sessions. We can all take maybe a little stretch, little deep breath, get our blood flow in here for these sessions. We do have a number of them to provide to you today. The first one is a new attendees lounge. This is specifically for any folks who have not been to a DDC meeting before, or have only been to, you know, like maybe a year's worth of DDC meetings. You can go ahead and meet each other as your peers, maybe form a little cohort, exchange contact information so that you can build relationships with your peers across the 4 counties that we support and that are represented in this meeting today. The second one is You're Testing Us. And this is going to be, our testing team is going to be in this room. And just a reminder, for the rooms that have RIC staff in them, we're not presenting anything. We don't have anything prepared for you. These are your rooms. If you want to talk amongst yourselves about any of these topics, you can feel free, but there will be a representative from each of these teams coming up to answer any questions that you might have specific to that team. So the first one is You're Testing Us with the testing team. The second one is At Your Special Services. That will be our special services team. We do have School Tool, eSchool Data, and hopefully Infinite Campus representatives on with us today. So there'll be someone in each one of those rooms to have conversations, answer questions, or just be a fly on the wall, depending upon how the conversation goes. There's a best practices for end of year verification room. If you want to start talking about what you do for end of year verification and share that with your colleagues, that is a room for you. And last but not least, everybody's favorite. I know it's everybody's favorite because I've already received some data haikus in my inbox. So a data haiku, write a data inspired haiku. And for those of you who need a refresher about what haikus are, it's a 3-line poem. The first sentence or the first line has 5 syllables, second line has 7 syllables, and the third line again with 5 syllables. And you can share it with your group. Do not use AI. Let's get some brain cells moving. And at the end of our breakout sessions, we are going to ask for any feedback from all of the rooms. The breakout sessions themselves are going to last about 20 minutes. And the session after that for Q&A will be another 10 minutes or so. So I say, let's get started. I'm going to open up the rooms, maybe if I can find what happened to them. Breakout rooms, here we go. Oh, I had written them earlier. And now that I had to reboot, unfortunately, I have to rename the rooms. So while I do that, is there anyone who's already written a data haiku who'd like to share one with us?
You're praying I'll be quiet right now.
No, I'm praying that someone will talk right now.
Mine's not technically a data haiku, so, you know. And I can't remember it
great.
either.
Helen, I could never resist a double dog dare. So
Well, today it's
So
a
go for
triple
it.
dog dare.
it's triple dog dare today. Okay.
Well,
Mhm.
today it's a triple dog dare. So if that doesn't get you writing
Yeah, you
poetry,
Well,
can't
I
do
don't know
there we
that.
what
go.
Triple
will.
dog dare.
All right, here's my haiku.
Okay.
L0 error. Quick, call data warehouse team. Fixed. Calmness returns.
Love it.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right, I'm up to room 7. It's gonna happen fast. And one more, and then I'm gonna just go ahead and open the rooms. You can go ahead and choose whichever one you want.
Hang on a second, Joan, and we'll get to your comment. Helen and I'll bring it to Helen's
Okay.
attention in a moment.
So I'm opening the rooms now. You should be able to go ahead and choose your own. So go ahead and do that. We'll see you in about 20 minutes. Welcome back from the breakout sessions. We did at the beginning ask you to give some feedback on these session rooms. So if anyone would like to go ahead and tell us if there was an overarching topic that you talked about in your room, an idea that you want to share, anything that that went on. Any volunteers for that? In the new attendees lounge, I know we just had one visitor there, and I think all the RIC folks said hello to her. Anyone want to talk about what happened in the testing? Just go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to speak.
People just dealt with my problems, so I appreciate it.
Did they make you sing, Michael?
No, don't start.
Okay.
Mike, do you do haikus?
I probably could off the top of my head, but I'll leave that one for now.
Okay.
It might be a homework assignment for the mentorship program, just for you.
How about the school tool or eSchool data or infinite campus rooms? Would anyone like to share anything from those rooms? Hearing cavernous no, I will go on to best practices for end of year verification. Would anyone like to speak up on that?
Actually, we did have something very interesting brought up that we're going to be investigating, which is that the SIRS manual does not really have anything about emancipated minors and how to report their guardians or lack thereof. So stay tuned for that to be coming out when we get some guidance from NYSED.
Great.
If memory serves me correctly, there is no such thing in New York State.
I think
Kind of
that
a
there is
legal
a
question.
mechanism.
But that was from a while ago. I may be wrong, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
All right, to be continued.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
we
find out
continue.
what data support has to say.
Yeah.
And the sad but true story about the data haikus room, it was empty. So I just was in there talking to myself. So anyway, if anyone wants to share a data haiku, please feel free to do that. You can email us, text us, put it on your email signature, whatever you like. So thank you. We hope you found those breakout sessions valuable. And with that, we are going to go to our next 10-minute break. That's 2 of 2. This is our last 10-minute break. And following that, we still have a lot of information for you. So get up, get a stretch, get a deep breath, get a cup of coffee, get a snack, go take care of any personal business that you need to take care of, all in 10 minutes. And we will see you on the flip side of that. Okay.
Ellen, I just want to point out, I think we have a few haikus in the.
Yes, I do see a couple of data haikus in the chat, which I love to find after I came out of my break mode. So we have 2. The first one is by our very own Pascal. She says, "Today is the day. You're off to report. Clear errors away." Thank you, Pascal. Thank you. We also have one from Michelle, and she writes, "Streams flow into fields, formatting the green landscape with information. So a little analog data. That's nice. I like that. I like that. Very good. So with that, we're going to get right back to our next topic, which heck, that's me. All right. So location. Everybody knows that this is the first rule of real estate, but it's also the data coordinator's mantra. So let's review the process for adding locations to level 0. The district ID, first of all, this is the form that you would use to send us the location adds, anything that you would need to add to level 0. So you have 4 columns here: the district ID, location name, and location beds codes. So we're going to go through each one of those in order. Your district ID is a unique 8-digit alphanumeric code. And the easiest place to find it, in my opinion, is in level 0. You would just open level 0, and once you're in there, you're probably used to seeing your district listed right here. It's this number here that starts with NY if you are a public school district or a BOCES. That would be your number right there that we're looking for in the district ID. If you're a non-public school, that number starts with 800 instead of NY. So you put your district ID in, and then here's this 6-digit numeric code that uniquely identifies the building in which the student is receiving a service, and that's the location ID. It's assigned by your district. We do not assign that number. SED does not assign that number. That's all you. And it uniquely identifies the building in which the student is receiving the service. So the max characters for that is 6. The location code that you choose here should match the same location in your SMS, in any other source systems that you're using for student data. Should be the same number. So this location ID should match anything that's already in your SMS that you're trying to match. If a BOCES is reporting a virtual location, you would want to use your virtual, your BOVL, in this field. If you are a district sending your students to BOCES, do not use the BOVL. That's only for use by the BOCES. If you are defining a homebound building, that building is the location ID for that should be 000777, and that will be distributed in the notes after the meeting. The level 1 location report by district provides a view of the location codes that your district has in use. If you don't have level 1 access, we can also send you a listing of all locations for your district pulled directly from the data warehouse. It's a handy resource because using it will prevent the use of codes more than once, which is not allowed. So that would head that problem off at the pass if you looked at these things before creating a location ID, since we cannot reuse a location. And also, way down here, there's this page down. So this isn't all of the locations. It's all you're going to see on one screen, but remember to use the page down so that you can view the whole list. The location name should be the name of the building exactly how you want to see it in level 0. Make sure this name matches the name that you put into your student management system, like I said before, and it needs to be 40 or fewer characters. If it's over 40, the system will not let me add it. So make sure that your location name is 40 or fewer characters. The beds code is a 12-digit number that can be found in SEDREF, and it's listed here at, it's listed in SEDREF as the SED code. And you can remember that the SED, when sounded out, SED, rhymes with bed. So you know that that's the code you're looking for. It is not the institution ID. It is not any other sort of number that might be on SEDREF. It is the SED code that we're looking for. So what about SEDREF again? Okay, so let's take a look at SEDREF. It is the State Education Department reference file. And to access it, you would want to go to the application business portal, and there is this link here that you can click for SEDREF. It is a public facing page. You do not need to log in. So you can even just, once you're there on the SEDREF page, you can bookmark that page and go directly there. Here are some of the things that you're going to find on SEDREF once you get there: beds codes, contact info, addresses, historic data. Let's see. All right. Oh, here are a couple links for you. So that's the link to the business portal. When you log into the business portal, you're probably going to see different things up here than I have, depending upon what applications you have credentials for or permissions for. And here is the direct link to SEDREF. So if you don't want to go through the portal, you can go directly to SEDREF. So this is the general search screen. When you get to SEDREF, you will notice a few things about it. There's a menu at the top and the bottom, so you can use the menu from either place. You can use these. They're generally what you think they are. Let me see if I can. Yeah. If you go to the public help, which is right over here, you're going to get this information here. So you can look at SEDREF reports, child nutrition reports. But we're going to skip over this for just a second here and give you a little bit more tour of this. You must use the % at the end of the institution name in order to search the database. So if we're using Port Jervis here as an example, here you can see that Jervis absolutely has the indicator, the % at the end of the name, but we also put it at the beginning of the name. Because if you didn't put it at the beginning of the name, it might not look at Port Jervis. It might look at institutions only that say Jervis. So you want to make sure to use those % absolutely after the search information you're putting in, and sometimes even before. There are other fields in this that we use not infrequently. The county code, the state code obviously is going to be New York, but not always. If you're looking for an out-of-state placement, you might find that here, and so on and so forth. So any of these fields can be used to find an institution, but the most popular one by name by far is the name field. So in order to find the name, you're going to put that information in, and then what happens after we put that Jervis and then the %, you can see what came up here. So this is records 15 to 17. There's more records available, and you can see that the city of Port Jervis is included here because we put, you know, % Jervis, right? So it's bringing up things that aren't necessarily schools. And then some schools that are Port Jervis. So this is the one right here. If we were to click on that, it brings us to the data for that particular institution. And this is why a lot of people get confused. Here's the institution ID. That is a completely different naming convention for the location that we don't use for this purpose. The one you want is over here where it says SED code. Okay, said rhymes with bed. So that is the code that you're going to put in to this form. Okay, so the location beds code goes right here. Once you have all of that information into the form, you are going to email it to me at datawarehouse@mhric.org. We do try to process new location requests the same day we receive them, but it's not always guaranteed and not always possible, and it might take up to a few days to complete. Once we process your request, there's an overnight refresh process, which adds the location to your level 0 location table. For example, and generally speaking, if you send us a location ad on a Tuesday, you will see it at level 0 that Wednesday morning, the following Wednesday morning. Okay. So what if there are some special considerations for this? Is it the same for every SMS? Where do you put it? Where do you put the code in your SMS? I don't know. It's different for each one. If you don't know where to put these codes in to create a building in your SMS, you definitely want to reach out to your student information system support team for that information. When schools change physical locations, the beds code can also change, and you would need to define a new local location code. And I think I mentioned before, you cannot reuse a local code. They are one-offs. Okay, so what if it's a brand new location and the beds code is not available yet? My general answer is let's give it about a week and try again. This can happen sometimes if a new beds code is issued and is in SEDREF. Sometimes it takes the other systems such as such as the data warehouse, the whole data warehouse, to catch up. So it wouldn't be available to add as a location for you. I usually try it a week after. That's usually enough time. But like I said, it takes some behind the scenes catching up to do. So fear not, we will be on it and notify you when it's available. Are there any questions on this generally, or was there anything specific
been
to
nothing in
adding
the
these
chat on
locations that I
this.
forgot? Okay. Chat, let's see.
Yeah, some other questions, but we've gone back and forth.
Okay.
Those are all set.
Okay. All right. So with that, then I'm gonna pass it along to Sam.
Thanks, Ellen. All right, good afternoon, everybody. So I aspire to be as funny as Pam, so I'm going to start with a joke. So which way did the programmer go? Data way. Get it? Ba-dum-bum. Okay, anyways, so
It needs
I'm
work,
gonna-
Sam.
I know it's easy. I'm gonna start with digital resources, everybody's favorite topic. Okay, so we're going to per the 23-24 state ed memo, data can be pulled anytime throughout the year by state ed, so it should be as accurate as possible. As of this moment, the due date for the digital resources data is the end of year deadline, which is that August 14th by noon. But the survey should be updated as needed. And those digital resources, the data, it's being collected for future funding opportunities. Nothing, it's not tied to state aid yet, but it could be at some point. So we want to make sure we're doing that canvas every fall. Districts and BOCES should canvas for this survey. So BOCES and out of district placements, they only need to report the surveys for full-time students. If a student is attending BOCES part-time, the survey should be reported by the home district or the LEA. So LEA, for anybody that's new, is the local educational agency. Partial survey results are now accepted, but now that they're accepted, or they were previously, if your district provides devices to students, can you answer that one question on the survey that you provided the device and submit the survey for students? Well, you shouldn't. For state ed, surveys should still be conducted every year. So just keep that in mind as the time comes up. All right. And Helen, can you go to the next? Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, so moving on to the next slide. All right, so many times we will be asked if districts or BOCES can paraphrase or update the questions, and State Ed has advised they can't be changed in any way. So if you're a district, keep this in mind that if you use Google Forms to collect the survey results, they do need to be exactly as the questions are worded on the memo, and I've linked that memo for you just so you have that to reference. Okay. Moving on to the digital resources visualization on level 1. So you can find this under team content and then the visualizations folder if you're not familiar with it. So after you migrate digital surveys from level 0 and a nightly refresh, this visualization will update the following day. So a level 1 user, they must choose MHRIC at the top and then choose either district or BOCES, whichever you are. And this screenshot here is currently showing the key indicators tab. So one thing with level 1, there's a small little cone filter icon. It's really tiny. It does allow you to filter further, if applicable, for this visualization or any level 1 visualization. So also at the top right, there are further filters, which you can use. You can filter poverty, ELS, and ethnicity. So I know it's kind of tiny at the bottom, this little tiny disclaimer at the bottom. It explains that BOCES will, they should expect to see all 0055 enrollments on the visualization, not just the full-time students that they need to survey. So that can be a little confusing. So just keep that in mind. And then also under that disclaimer, districts they'll see expected surveys. It might be higher than the enrollment due to students like transferring in districts or re-entries. Okay, so moving on to the second tab of the same visualization. So to see this, you have to go to the survey results tab to see this actual screen. And this goes over all 9 questions from the digital resources survey in a bar graph format. And it shows a student list to the right, which I've removed due to PII, of course. And level 1 user can filter further on this as well for grade, location, poverty, ELS, and ethnicity in the upper right corner. Okay, so moving to the third tab on the top of the visualization, the Internet Access Map tab. This shows patterns in internet access. Now we've replaced the actual map here that you would see for your district for privacy purposes. But as you can tell, this visualization is very user-friendly, easy to use, but there is now a report guide, and you can find the link for that on our next slide. Okay, so here, this is a link to all the level 1 report guides that have been created thus far. And I just wanted to speak about, there are many level 1 reports that are great resources. So I just want to go over a few of them. The L1C air report, and all of you have been using this all year, right? After you migrate from level 0, typically you want to check a day or so after to see if anything is erroring out. Then we have our data quality report card. And you want to just make sure to check any record that has a big red X to see about the data quality for that. In this report, it reviews counts for reasonableness of the current year thus far compared to the previous 2 years. So when you're looking at the report card, you want to also keep in mind there's certain things we haven't gotten to yet, right? So we're in March now, and June graduates have not been updated because we're not in June. They haven't graduated yet. So you're going to see a big red X. So just keep the timing in mind. And also keep in mind about certain things can affect these numbers when you're comparing over the past 3 years. COVID, or maybe a school program has changed. Maybe you have a new pre-K program or something in your district. So when you're comparing those years, be mindful of that. So there are many level 1 reports. I urge you to go in, check them out if you're not familiar with them for student and enrollment. There's the student immigrant list. Two slightly newer, I guess you would say, reports, the migrant and the homeless verification reports. And those do link directly in the data quality report card as well when you get to that section. There's the program participation detail report where you can see all your programs reported. There's many course and CIA verification reports, which will help you with some of those upcoming deadlines that Michelle spoke about earlier. So level 1 reports, they are a great resource, of course, but verification always should be on level 2 because the data has to make it to level 2. And we are in March. The school year is flying by, so don't wait until that end of year to begin verifying data, especially if you have any of those 10-month staff to help you verify as we're going through. Okay, so we're going to switch gears. I have a lot of reminders for you today. So we're going to go through many things. We're going to start with Title I. So the link on this slide, you may want to bookmark it if you haven't already, but this is the main page for allocations. Okay. So I know earlier on, Michelle did speak to this a little bit, but I just want to go over it as well here. So this slide, it does link the 23-24 allocations for the Title I Part A specifically. So again, bookmark it if you don't have that. Now, the NYSED allocations page is not going to tell you which type your district should report. So you should always go to your business official, your Title I officer to advise you that you're reporting accurately. So depending which program your district reports for Title I Part A, there is school-wide or there is targeted assistance. So I'm just going to start with the 0411 school-wide Title I Part A program. So if you're reporting school-wide, that would be the only program that would need to be reported for school-wide Title I assistance. But if you are if you're a school that has targeted assistance, you have to report the 0286, which is the Title I Part A, Improving Basic Programs Targeted Assistance. And that's reported for students who are receiving funds, who are receiving services that are funded through a Title Targeted Assistance Program. So with the 0286 program, you do have to accompany it with one or more of those records of those those specific services or subjects, if you will, that are shown on the right of this slide. So you can see it there. So you can't report one without the other with the 0286 and the specific services. So you need both of those. And if you're missing one, level 0 will let you know, right? That dreaded level 0 error. It'll tell you that you're missing one or the other code so that we can go ahead and migrate that data. So you can find more information regarding these codes as we talked about earlier on page 244 of the current SIRS manual. Okay. So I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move on. So in addition to the Title I Part A school-wide and targeted.
Too soon. Susan reports that when she clicks the Title I link, she gets a page not found. So we'll double check on that, Susan, before
yeah,
we
we'll check that
distribute this.
before we send it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Link. Okay, thank you. All right, so in addition to those two Title I codes that I just spoke about, there is the 0892 homeless students serviced with set aside funds. So that 0892 should be reported for any homeless student. So that would be a student that has the homeless 8262 program reported. That receive services that were paid for with the homeless set aside funds. So many times this code can be overlooked. So please review your homeless students and see if they fit this 0892 definition. So just some examples of covered services are school supplies or clothes given to a specific student, session tutoring or counseling provided to a student. Also, if the McKinney-Vento liaison, if their salary is partially or fully funded using Title I set-aside funding, but they do need to meet the specific criteria. So the student or their family has had to have had at least one conversation with the liaison. And the liaison, they need to facilitate like receipt of services by the student or the family. So for example, the liaison meets with the family, they assess their needs, they connect the family with a local shelter provider, let's say. So then you can report that 0892 code. So for further details on this, and there are many details on this code, to make sure you're reporting it properly, you can see the current SIRS manual on page 262. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to move on. So moving through the alphabet, right, to Title I Part D now, funding. So you want to see again that link there for the allocations for the Title I Part D and make sure you bookmark that. So as with Part A, you want to check with your business official or Title I officer to make sure you're reporting accurately. But if your district does not receive that Part D funding, then you do not need to report this program. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the 0187 Title I Part D, intervention programs for children and youth who are delinquent. So what is delinquent exactly? What is a delinquent child exactly? So STATA does have a very specific definition that the student needs to meet before you can report this 0187 program. So this is a child that's in need of supervision, PINS. So person in need of supervision. That's what that stands for our new folks. And they need to be between the ages of 5 and 17. And they need to reside in correctional institution. So the funding that is allocated to districts where institutions for the delinquent students are located. And also the allocation data, it will show the final eligible child count numbers serviced by the institution. So this count will determine the funding amounts. So before I go on to neglected children, do we have any questions on that one?
It's quiet out there.
Oh,
Oh,
it just
wait,
saw them
wait.
pop up.
Okay, we do have one. I believe that George Junior Republic in Freeville, New York is one of the correctional institutions. If you have a student placed there, that may be a 0187 child. That
Okay,
was
so
from
good
Sherry.
point. Thank you, Sherry. So something, and if you're unsure of a location, you can go to CEDREF that Helen went over earlier, and you'll be able to see if it's a neglected or delinquent location. It will link that right on their page. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so moving over to the second part of Title I Part D funding is the 8327, and that's the prevention and intervention for children who are neglected. So it's similar to the prior 0187 delinquent code, whereas the definition of students who can be reported with the neglected program is very specific. So the allocation page again won't tell you what you need to report. You want to check with your Title I officer or your business official. But the students that can be reported need to be between ages of 5 and 17 years old. They need to reside in an institution that services neglected students. So that's not foster students living in a household. And they either need to be abandoned or neglected by or the death of parents. So if you're not sure, like I said, SEDREF can tell you if a location is for the neglected or delinquent. You can check that. But I recommend doing your due diligence of verifying that the appropriate program codes are reported for the appropriate students. And by doing that, you can use the reasonableness report. It does show neglected and delinquent from the student light indicator of the yes or no. So it'll show that part, but then it will also show separately under the programs if you've reported any of these codes, the 0187 and the 8327 for the delinquent and the neglected students. So data equals dollars, right? We want to make sure that we're getting as much funding as possible. But I have also included here the NYSED ESSA funded program office, and they would be able to answer any of those allocation amount questions for you. Okay, so moving on to the next section, not seeing any questions. So the next area I'm going to be covering today is CTE, CDOS, and dual credit reminders. So everybody's still awake, right? You're good? Okay. So for our more seasoned folks, we're going through reminders. So there's nothing new in this section. It's all going to be just reminders for us. Okay. So the CTE program provider reports the CTE program data. So there, however, are some districts in our region, just a small handful, that do offer approved in-district CTE programs. So they would need to report the CTE program. Data should be reported for approved CTE programs only. So you can go to this link that I've shared to determine which programs are approved by state ed for either your district or your BOCES, because not all programs offered by BOCES are approved. So definitely check the link to make sure we're reporting accurately. So the CTE data will include course, program data, and CTE assessment data. And the current SIRS does go over reporting information on pages 37 to 41 for this as well. And the districts continue to be responsible to report the CTE endorsements for the student's graduation credentials. So that's nothing new. It's just a reminder that we want to make sure that BOCES and districts are communicating to ensure that the correct endorsements are reflected in the diploma type issued by the school district. So might be a little early for this, but you want to make sure it's on your radar as June keeps getting closer. So once the BOCES or the program provider reports the CTE program to level 2, the district will be able to check level 2 for this information. So why does it matter, right? Why does it matter that we have the right endorsements? So the CTE technical endorsement is given the highest point value of 2 in the calculation of the College Career and Civic Readiness Index score. So that CCRI score. So accurately reporting the number of technical endorsements, they can raise a school's CCCR score. Too many C's there. All right. Okay, so any questions? No? Okay. So I'm just gonna keep going then. So districts should report students who are taking CTE coursework, whether they have earned the credential. Now, what I mean by that is the 8271. So the program exit reason shows if the student actually receives that credential. So as we go through here, for that program, the 700 exit code indicates that the student completed the requirement. The 701 exit code is for students no longer participating in the program. So we're going to go through a few scenarios on the next slide, so we'll get to that in a moment. But we want to make sure we're reporting the 8271 for all students taking the CTE coursework and work-based learning that may be used to satisfy requirements for the CDOS, okay, for students that will earn a diploma. So the 8271 program code is not needed for standalone CDOS. Only one credential code can be reported per student. So that's why this code exists, to make sure that the the CDAS is being reported, right? And the only way to indicate that a student earned a CDAS credential in addition to a diploma, such as a Regents or a local diploma, is by reporting this 8271, the district's reporting the 8271. So we'll go through some scenarios now so you can see what I'm speaking about here. So there are 3 CDAS scenarios. So the first one, the student earns a standalone CDAS credential and no diploma such as a Regents. So in that case, the 8271 is not reported. And then scenario 2, the student earns a local or Regents diploma, but they also qualify for that CDAS credential. So that's why the 8271 program is reported with a 700 exit code of earned credential. So that's telling us that they earned a diploma and the CDAS credential. And this scenario, I think, is one of the more underreported things. It can easily go underreported if that is missing. And then scenario 3 is the student doesn't complete the CTE coursework. So the 8271 program is reported with a 701 exit code, which it means that they're no longer participating in the program. So you still want to report those students who were trying and they didn't earn, who were taking that CTE coursework, whether or not they earned the credential.
I just want to
Okay,
say
so
at
just-
this point that we do have a lot of information to cover still. So we're going to not take questions within the meeting at this point. We'll hold them till the end. That's all. So go ahead. Your next slide. Sandy.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Helen. All right, so moving on. So dual credit, what is it exactly, right? It's a course offered in partnership between at least one institution of higher education and at least one school district of OCs, where a secondary student they haven't graduated from high school. They also may be able to earn like post-secondary credit that is transferable to the higher education. So what if it's taken at a high school or BOCES? Okay, so typically that would mean that high school or BOCES teachers, they've been approved to teach the course by the college. So there can be instances where only some students in this course will be going for dual credit. Also the high school, they've agreed to grant high school credit to the student. And BOCES, if it's a BOCES run program, then they're responsible for reporting the students' courses and grades, the student class grade detail, which we haven't started importing yet. But this will affect the district CCCR credits. So they're attributed, the CCCR, they're attributed to the school district's accountability for these students. So you want to work together to make sure that the data is reported accurately for these dual credit kids. So what if it's taken at a college instead? So if the student attends a college course for dual credit, that's completely possible. You just want to make sure that that is reported accurately. Okay, so what if it's an advanced placement or AP course? So advanced placement or AP courses on their own are not considered dual credit or dual enrollment. AP courses, because they're not offered in partnership with a higher institution of higher education. Sometimes there's confusion with that because it's College Board, it's not a college, so there's a little confusion there. So lastly, I just want to talk about is the student class entry exit in relation to dual credit. So the dual concurrent enrollment indicator should be set to yes for students who successfully complete all the academic requirements to be eligible to receive college credit. So that's regardless of whether they actually obtain the post-secondary credit. Okay, so if students do receive college credit for the course, they should be reported as yes for dual credit. If they cannot receive college credit because maybe it requires payment or some other requirement that the student will not meet, yet they still completed all the academic requirements to be eligible to receive college credit, they should be reported as yes for dual credit. So you're going to always report that SCEE record with dual credit in the year that the credit was earned as well. And lastly, students are eligible to be reported if they have completed a course that culminates in both post-secondary and high school credit, regardless of whether they actually obtain the post-secondary credit. So we have an upcoming deadline in May for this, for student class entry exit. So you want to make sure that your counselors, because they'll be invaluable in making sure that the appropriate courses are reported with the dual credit indicator, and they're probably only 10-month employees. So just keep that in mind as you're going through everything. Okay, so moving on. So how can you verify if a student's course was reported accurately with dual credit? So glad you asked, right? So after allowing data to migrate to level 2, so that takes some time, you want to make sure you look at the SIRS 330 report. And here it is. The SIRS 330 does refresh daily after a nightly refresh. So that's nice. You don't have to wait that full week. And this does allow you, as shown, to drill down on students to see the dual credit indicator for any student as well. Okay. So we're going to completely change gears to something else. So, if you could go back one for me, Helen. Oh no. Yeah, back one, I think. So we're going to go. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Back to the level 0. I think mine just looks a little different than yours. That's all. Thank you. So we're going to move on to assessment reporting in level 0, as import 20 and 21 for the COSIF will be here before we know it. The Regents and Nicetel exams, as noted earlier, they're reported by testing department, so they're not going to be added to level 0. There are exams, however, that should be imported to level 0 from your SMS or frontline. Some of them are COSIF. Now, the alt-reg and CCR are now under advanced, CTE, if applicable, CDOS, and the arts sequence. So if your district is required to report COSIF for the school year, I know Sarah shared that list with you. They'll be imported from Frontline. I think she said import 21 it starts. So you want to work with special services if you have any questions about the COSIF requirement. So as I mentioned earlier with the CTE section, the CTE assessments are going to be reported by the CTE program provider. So in most cases, it would be a BOCES unless you have an approved CTE program in your district, which is a small handful. So we'll go into some of those reminders now for those particular assessments. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, please. So ADB is the new category in level 0, as we said, where you're going to find AP and IB assessments for this year. And the level 0 test description and version is going to be that 2024-630 because that's the end of the year. And this chart here does show you all the approved exams that can be used for the ADB category, which are also listed in the current SIRS. You'll see them on pages 170 to 181 as well. And you'll notice on the list here are some SATs, which they stopped offering them in January of 2021. But the codes remain in the 23-24 school year here for historical purposes for previous year reporting only. So that's why they're listed there. Okay. So just like alt-reg that has moved over to that advanced, CCR has moved over to the category of advanced. So again, these are where AP and IB exams are going to be found now under the advanced in level 0. So advanced assessments, they do feed into accountability metrics, and it's reflected, if you could go back one. So it's just reflected in the SIRS 108 CCR accountability report, which isn't refreshed yet, so it still says TBD. So SIRS 108 isn't a certified report at the end of the year, but it should be reviewed for accuracy. All right, thank you. Okay, so moving on. So the CDOS, the LOTE art sequence, those are all used to populate the SIRS 340 and 341 reports, those graduation exam requirements. Many of your counselors may use those. So you want to report the assessment measure code and either leave the assessment score field blank or pass. We're not going to report any failing, any of those failed assessments. So if a score of F or fail is accidentally reported, the associated column on the SIRS 341 will still display a yes for that assessment. So you want to make sure you're not reporting those failures. If it's a local assessment or sequence assessment, you're going to use that standard achieved code of NA. And lastly, the projected diploma type on the SIRS 340 and 341, it's only going to show advanced designation if the student meets all assessment requirements for it. So you may want to look at that report guide for those reports for further information. So to indicate satisfaction requirements for that CDOS pathway, you're going to use the CD001, which is a CDOS pathway exam. And that indicates the student has passed one of those department approved pathway assessments for CDOS. Now, obviously, this is a lot of information I'm throwing at you, right? So be sure to look at the link for the multiple pathways that I've shared there, and also page 158 of the current SIRS manual for further information. Okay. So moving on. So the LOTE pathway assessment, so students that take the approved Chinese, French, Italian, or Spanish pathway exam, the LOTE checkpoint A does not need to be reported to SIRS. However, the LOTE checkpoint B should be reported for students that pass the exam, not students who fail. Reporting that LOTE checkpoint B identifies students who fulfilled requirements for the regions for advanced designation. So if a student passes the LOTE pathway exam, the LOTE checkpoint B does not need to be reported. Okay, so when students are exempt from the LOTE requirement, also per the IEP, let's say the code LT000, LOTE exempt should be used. So there's different scenarios there. For regions with advanced designation, students they can use the 5-unit sequence for CTE, which is that SQ001, or the ART sequence of SQ002. And this is all, again, outlined in the SIRS as well. So this is just a reminder of those current processes. Okay, and lastly, I'm just going to talk about My Brother's Keeper. These are the list of participating districts we received from NICEAD recently. Now, tomorrow is the deadline. Tomorrow is the 20th by noon for any of you that need to report your MBK programs. So since we're going to be taking questions later, I'm just going to pass it over to Michelle to go over some staff updates and reminders.
Thanks, Sam. All right, so let's begin by looking at some due dates specifically related to the staff templates. So, excuse me. These are a subset of the dates on the timeline that are related to staff templates and templates that have dependencies on staff templates. So at the beginning of the meeting, I spoke about the May 17th deadline for out of cert data, as well as course instructor assignments, student class entry exit, day calendar, and student daily attendance. And that data is due, as I said, on the 17th, and includes attendance through May 3rd. July 1st is when staff evaluation opens. At this time, we haven't heard if NICEAD will be implementing any reporting changes this year. We all certainly hope not. But if they do, we will notify the field as soon as possible. The best piece of advice that I can give at this point is to gather information regarding your district's APPR plan. While someone else in the district may put that plan together and implement it, you will want to know who to go to, how the subcomponent scores and overall ratings are being collected, and how they will be imported to level 0. For example, will you have an extract from an application that you use to collect this data, or will you need to build the file yourself? I did create a tutorial for staff evaluation last year containing several segments to explain this process. As long as we are not made aware of any changes, we will post it in July once the collection opens. While the SERS end of year data is due on August 16th, which means migrated from level 0 by noon on August 14th, there are a couple of 23-24 collections that will continue after the deadline. Those are SE events and staff evaluation. Staff evaluation data is due on October 18th, October 16th for us. And the staff evaluation report certification is due by October 25th. Keep in mind that this certification form is posted on the SED Monitor Vendor and Performance area on NYSED's business portal rather than the IDEX. You may not have access to this area and may need to instruct the superintendent, to submit this form. All right, so now let's talk about some reminders. This is teacher certification matching. It's come up a couple of times today. And during January's DDC meeting, we took a deep dive into the process. Feel free to review that recording as there are many pieces to this puzzle. Utilize the SERS 328 to see if you have any teachers that are listed as out of cert. If there are, you want to review both the SERS 329 to check the teacher certification areas and the course crosswalk, and the crosswalk which is posted on the IRS portal, and that displays how state course codes are mapped to certification areas. This can help you resolve any issues. There may be times though where a teacher is teaching out of their certification area and they will need to remain on the list. Additionally, data from staff snapshot and course instructor assignment also play an important part here and must be up to date and complete in order for the matching process to be accurate. Since data is coming from multiple sources, it can take time to investigate and make necessary updates. Please start now if you haven't already done so. Also, while verifying, remember to look for teachers who may not be reported at all. So there could be some errors of omission and you want to kind of try to look out for those. All right, so continuing with a staff assignment. Have you cleared all of your staff assignment errors related to the new fields? So we have those two new fields this year, staff assignments, the percent time and the assignment field. Remember that these new reporting requirements only apply to your school nurse to specific codes. So 2210, your school nurse teacher, 2211, school nurse RN, 2212, licensed practical nurse, 2022 is the social worker, 2017 is the school psychologist, and 2117 is the school counselor. And the percent time collects the percentage of time the person is assigned such responsibilities at a particular location, and that cannot exceed 100%. And the assignment field identifies the type of assignment the staff person has. Is it in district? Are they contracted out? So you employ them and they're contracted out either to another public school or to a private school, or are they contracted in? So they're contracted from another place and then they're brought in, and then there's one for public and one for private there as well. And there are scenarios that surround these different types of assignments in the SERS manual, so you can be sure to get that information there as well. One thing of note, I was working with a district recently who contracts in nurses to assist students with disabilities in their class, and it was a 1-to-1 scenario. And the district asked if these nurses needed to be reported. So that was something that I did forward to data support. And NYSED did respond, and I was told that because these nurses are working one-on-one with individual students, rather than providing nursing services for the district, they do not need to be reported under the new guidance. So if that is something that occurs in your district and you had wondered about that or had a question about that, that is the guidance that SED has provided. All right, so in the meantime, with the other areas and all of the, we didn't mention attendance of tenure, but we have level 2 reports for all of the areas. And you should be reviewing all of those level 2 reports actually throughout the school year. But of course, as we get closer to end of year, you want to be on top of that as well. And you might wonder what happens with all of this staff data. Well, some of it is reported to the public on data.nicet.gov. And so just to kind of give you a little, a couple examples to see that connection. All right, so here we have teachers identified as teaching out of certification. And that gets reported publicly under the staff qualifications area, which is a part of the school staff graduation and post-secondary enrollment rate data section of the school report card. And this section may have more or less data depending upon how much of the report card information has been released up to the date that you are viewing it. So this screenshot shows data from the 2020-21 school year, just as an example. The most current data available is from the 22-23 school year. So this section shows how information on experienced and inexperienced teachers. So if we take a closer look at that, teachers with fewer than 4 years of experience as a teacher are considered inexperienced. And this is based on the information reported in the years of teaching experience and staff snapshot. Principals are also reported as experienced or inexperienced based on the number of years of experience in staff snapshot. And 4 years is the benchmark there as well. On the next slide, we have another example. In the student and educator report, which is separate from the school report card, additional staff information is reported to the public on both teachers and non-teaching staff. This information is obtained through your staff assignment and staff attendance reports. The most current data available is for the 21-22 school year. It has not been released for 22-23. And our example is from the 2021 school year. So here you'll see a number of counselors and social workers in addition to teachers and principals. So you want to ensure that you have staff assignment records for all staff members working in these areas. I know there had been some discussion about adding maybe some additional titles here like nurses and librarians. I'm not sure where they are with that, but we'll have to see, if they do include that when additional data is released. But the takeaway from this is that data may be used in different ways at the local, regional, state, and federal levels. And some of the data we report will be made available to the public. Therefore, verification of all data at level 2 is critical. All right, and so with that, I will pass it back over to Helen.
Thank you, Michelle. The next few slides are from our testing services team, Loretta, John, Mia, and Lori. They are here for your reference, and we're not going to go through them now. There will be a recording sent out with meeting materials after. So they have August regions, June regions, NYSA, NYSATEL, NYSA slot, 3 through 8 paper-based, CBT, and their contact information in these slides will be provided for you. On the horizon is next up with some interesting things for you upcoming or existing, and we're just telling you about them now. So the next thing is that we have a YouTube channel, which is brand new for us. We recently created a resource library for you on YouTube. This will be our new primary video sharing platform. A link to the channel will be added to our website as we work on reconfiguring that for the next school year. But in the meantime, here is the link to the channel. Please make sure your district or BOCES allows YouTube usage, because this is how we will be distributing them. Please subscribe to the channel. so you can be among the first to know when we've uploaded something new. Generalized training videos and DDC meetings are accessible to the public. So should you have, pardon me, you shouldn't have to log in order to see them. If we make videos that are specific to a district, we will send those directly to you. But for general purposes, we're going to be using YouTube for the foreseeable future. Our next DDC meeting is June 4th. There's only one left for this school year. So if you haven't already registered for it, you can do that through the link provided on the slide. And remember, we always send the meeting materials out to you in draft version the Friday before the meeting, and then sometime after the meeting, we will provide you with the final resources, and that will be sometime later this week. Okay, it's 12:53. We have until 1 o'clock. Are there any outstanding questions? To unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
There is a question from John far up that I think we need to check further into. Regarding the SIRS report showing career readiness for CTEs 2 points, it counts non-cohort sealed by literacy students, but not graduates in the cohort that received it. How does a student who is non-cohort get the seal? Someone can get back to me outside of the meeting, he's saying. So we might have to research that and get back with you, John.
So I see there's a couple of folks regarding in-person meetings. Our site is still under construction. It will be under construction. We do know that for a fact in the fall, and that is going to include the conference center. So we do not have the facilities at this time in order to do these in person.
Just primary is Kathy, because I had started that. But is it something that you're open to once that's the case, or like, is that the primary reason they're not in person at this point?
Well, we found attendance-wise that overall, this is easier for most folks. We would like, if we can, to try to, maybe have a room where folks who want to come in person could come, maybe for a small gathering. But the vast majority of folks do prefer that we do the online format.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised because I was saying on one of the breakout rooms that it just is there's just an element that's missing when you don't get to talk to all your colleagues in person. So I think it would be great if somehow that was an option.
Well, we do encourage everyone certainly to participate in day tag, right, which is typically in person for the majority of the year, and it's an opportunity for all DDCs, not just in our region, but across the state to interact with each other. So that is another avenue for that. But we can, once we have availability at the conference center, at that time, we could try to see if there's a way to have some sort of in-person space for people to gather if they want to see the presentation.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anything else? Going once? Going twice? Thank you so much for joining us today. If you need to reach any one of my team in the data warehouse help desk or data mentoring services, you can reach us this way. We're so happy you joined us today. And thank you. Have a great day. If you have any questions, you can always email us, phone call us. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.